to extend a warm welcome to all the new counselors. We're gonna briefly go over some, yay, you did it! The second election, you did it! It happened! Yes, we're very sorry for the long ride. Hopefully this is a lesson learned that this will never happen again. Actually, I'm the chair of policy committee, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. So first of all, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all the new counselors. We're going to briefly go over some, yay, you did it! Second election, you did it! It happened! So, yes, for those who are not familiar, I'm very sorry for the long ride. I'm actually not an expert myself. Hopefully this is a lesson learned that this will never happen again. Actually, I'm the chair of policy committee, and if you don't know anything, you can always during your elections to make sure ask a question, and we can help you out just go smoother to show you like the proper procedure how to go about things during Robert's rules. I'm just going to go over real basics of Robert's rules, some of the how we operate during one meeting. Raise your placard. So, and for those who are not familiar, it's a learning curve, and I'm actually not an expert myself either, so it'll be a learning experience for everyone. And if you don't know anything, you can always, during your speaking turn, ask a question, and we can help you out to show you like the proper procedure of how to go about things during Robert's rules. Some of the basics is that if you want to speak, you raise your placard, and I'll put you on the speakers list, and I'll call your name when it's your turn. It can be confusing sometimes. A point of personal privilege, that's something like, but it's not integral or something, so say point of personal privilege, and you don't have to be on the speakers list for that. So if someone's talking, you can't hear, you can say point of personal privilege, I can't hear. You don't know what the person can repeat themselves. Like an acronym is, so like point of information, you don't know that's the you can say that also without being on the speakers list, but use this carefully because some people can, it can be confusing sometimes where it's like a quick question, but it's not integral to know before making a vote or to also, like if you're, let's say, if you want to do a motion, you need to start right away with that. You don't know what, like an acronym about something and then do like someone says CAP. You don't know that right away. Community action. And then after somebody can say point of personal privilege. What is CAP? Sorry, information. Yes, thank you, Michelle. That said, my backup. And then you don't have to be on the speakers list for that. Also, all motions need to be seconded. So if you want to do a motion, you need to start right away with that motion. You don't, talk about something and then do the motion. You have to do it right away. And then after somebody seconds your motion, then you can motivate and talk further about it.
Like seriously, just because you don't know the arcane language
is that
some
clear
guy named
for
Henry
anyone?
Robert.
Any
That's
questions?
okay. Please ask questions.
We'll just start, and if anyone has questions, Robert's rules is for meetings to go smoothly. So that's the end goal, basically. We'll support each other to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and it'll take some time. Really useful.
What they have.
So before we
and if you don't know it, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, and just to say that, like,
seriously, just because you don't know the arcane language of some guy named Henry Robert, that's okay. Please ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. Like the whole point of Robert's rules is for meetings to go smoothly.
That's like
so that's
not your preferred name. That was your candidate name. Please
we'll
don't
support each other to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and it'll take some time.
Instead.
So before we approve the agenda,
and just to say that, like, next council meeting, you will all have proper printed ones with the Robert's Rules cheat sheets. It's just that we haven't acknowledged the list.
So we'd like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded
not your preferred name, that was your candidate name.
Nation is
please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll put your preferred name
on which we gather today.
Instead.
Tiohtià:ke, Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing So we'd like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands. Okay, so now does anyone have any recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today? Tiohtià:ke, Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections of past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community.
Council debate efficiency till
Okay,
after the
so now
presentations
does anyone
part.
have any adjustments
So I
to
guess
the
that
agenda?
would be a new 6. And the second thing I'd like to do is move down
Chairperson's report.
5B.
Sorry, so you want it to be before appointments?
Yeah. And then I would like to move down elections because because Mohammed isn't here
Yeah,
till 8:30, so
I would
assume,
like
after
to
appointments, so that would be a new sentence. Council debate efficiency till after the
What's the
presentations
reason for
part.
the first one?
So I
Because
guess
it's
that would
moving
be 6.
the main sections
And
to
the
different
second
parts
thing
of
I'd like to do
it's
is move
segmented.
down 5B, so like if we want to have an efficient debate, it would probably be better to discuss it first. And see if we want to do it this meeting isn't here till 8:30, so I'd assume like after appointments, so like
Business
that would be a new
substantive,
sentence.
because usually we don't put it in different sections that are not, because it's moving the main sections to different parts of
Appointments
it's
are
segmented.
debates.
It discusses debate.
So we'll
like,
put
if we want to
it as
have
A
an efficient debate,
instead in new
it would
business rather than
probably be
E.
better to discuss
that
it
okay?
first and see if we want to do it this meeting or not.
Because usually we don't put new business substantive before like substantive.
It all needs to
because
be in one
usually
section.
we don't put it in different sections that are not.
November 29th, we did elections, we
Yeah,
moved it
also,
up, so.
Okay, I'm
Appointments
gonna
aren't
suggest that we
debates.
go with how it's usually
So
done.
we'll
and we
put
keep it
the same section, and then we still have time
it as
to
A
use that instead.
because there's
in new
many other
business rather
points
than
after
E.
new business.
Is that okay?
I mean.
Because usually we don't put new business substantive before, like,
and then the
it
other
all
one
needs to
was
be in
about-
one section. Sorry, I'm a bit slow.
Previous meetings, for
What was the
example,
other one,
November 29th, we did elections, we moved it up, so,
Okay, I'm gonna
elections
suggest
till
that we go with
before
how it's
appointments,
Usually done and keep
I
it in the
guess,
same
or no,
section, and
after
then we still have time
appointments,
to
because
use
Mohammed's
that.
not here till 8:30.
Because there's many other points
Okay,
after
yeah,
new
because
business
for me
substantive.
that one's okay because
We're dependent on somebody coming, so we don't always have a choice in that. And then the other one was about, sorry, I'm a bit slow. What was the other one, Patrick? Yeah, John?
I would like to move down.
First, I'd like to add
elections
two
till
appointments.
before
Finance committee.
appointments,
There's two,
I guess, or
vacancies
no,
there.
after appointments, because Mohammed's not here till 8:30.
okay,
It's
yeah,
a-
because for me that one's okay because
We're dependent on somebody coming,
Just know
so
when you're done typing there.
we don't always have a choice in that.
Second, under presentations, I'd like to add as B, Cs.
All right, anyone else has, yeah, John?
First, I'd like to add this were circulated in the meeting finance committee. I wasn't able to send out at the 5 p.m. deadline last Friday because they sent me their documents around midnight, but I had spoken with them earlier in the week about bringing this to council. So folks are willing to hear from them now. If we need to move it till the next meeting, we can do that, but they are here. Under presentations, I'd like to add as B, Cs.
I would also like to add to appointments committee because I resigned from it, so
Documents around this
I
were circulated
messaged
in the
Caitlin,
meeting
but
package.
she's not here yet, so
I wasn't
it's
able to
better
send out
just
at the 5 p.m. deadline last Friday because they sent me their documents around midnight, and I spoke to them earlier in the week about bringing this to council. The third one was to pull mid-mandate. Folks are willing to hear from them as the very last item. We can do that, but they are here. So folks are really up to the room.
that would be,
I would also like to add to
Yeah.
appointments committee because I resigned from it, so
Yeah.
I messaged Caitlin, but she's not here yet, so it's better.
People read it. It's very lighthearted. If you answer the quiz properly, you'll get prizes. So it's- very last item. You do.
That was more for the new counselors to my top list.
okay, so,
Yeah. All right,
It's very lighthearted. If you answer the
motion
quiz
to
properly, you'll
approve the
get prizes.
agenda?
When we approve the agenda, the consent agenda is considered automatically ratified. So there's usually like executive reports, committee reports, which sometimes contain motions with them. So make sure you read the minutes of the committees before these meetings. Is when you approve the agenda, everything in consent agenda is considered approved by council. Just so folks
All
know.
right. Motion to approve the
alright,
agenda?
so motion to approve.
Chris, do you have a question?
When we approve the
Want to
agenda,
talk about why I pulled the
the
report?
consent agenda is considered automatically
Well, that's not the
ratified.
time.
Okay, not
So
fair
there's
enough.
usually like executive
Okay,
reports,
so
committee
motion to
reports,
approve the agenda.
which sometimes contain
All right,
motions with them. So
Rowan,
make sure you read the
second.
minutes of the committees before these meetings. Is
All
when you
right,
approve the agenda,
page.
everything in consent agenda is considered approved by council. Just folks know.
So, first on the agenda
Alright, so
is
motion to approve.
presentation from Students for Consent Culture.
You want to talk about why I pulled the report?
Oh, we didn't vote, yes.
Well, that's not.
All those in favor?
Okay, no, fair enough.
Okay, so motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Alright, all those in
Second.
favor of approving the agenda, can you raise your pocket, please?
So, first on the agenda is presentation.
Could we get one
for
extra
students
placard?
for culture.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I have to count all those in favor.
Thank you.
All right, ready again? Can you raise your pocket?
All right, all on the same page? Okay, we're gonna
Can we
go with
get
the
one
first
extra placard?
presentation now.
Yes.
For students for consent culture. Okay, great. Oh yeah, I have to count the votes.
Hello. Thank you all for inviting me here. It's actually like really nice to be here. Because I'll try and be quick because I know how long these meetings go from my time at SMU. And I also will note that we never had food, so you're already doing better than Miguel for your councils.
All right, all on the same page? Okay, we're gonna go with the first
My name is
presentation
Connor.
now.
I was a McGill student, recently graduated, and now I'm the National Chair for Students for Consent Culture Canada, which is formerly Our Turn. Thank you all which for might be the inviting name me that here. you It's folks actually are like really more nice to be here. So because I'm kind of want to just give you a rundown of the work that we do, and then I'll get to the relationship with CSU at the end. And I also will note that but more than anything, I'm hoping to just kind of be quick so that you folks have an opportunity to ask questions about the work that we're doing or like specific questions you might have about things that are going on. And now I'm the National Chair for Students for Consent Culture Canada, which is formerly Our Turn. So Students for Consent Culture Canada is an organization dedicated to supporting intersectional and grassroots anti-sexual violence advocacy and activism on campuses across Canada by serving as a hub of resources, tools, and institutional memory for student survivors and leaders to engage with. So what that actually kind of means was a group of us who organized around the publishing of the Our Turn National Action Plan from across the country. Started working in a more grassroots fashion as an organization to better policy practices more than anything. We kind of found ourselves all in a very similar position of our either through provincial legislation or just the good-heartedness of our institutions. Suddenly all these new anti-sexual violence policies were being passed, and there was, because they were so new, there was no best practices for students specifically to be able to advocate for proper policy. So a lot of student survivors more across the country were kind of getting together in groups and sharing best practices between campuses. Because the other thing that we found was because there was no knowledge of these best practices, it was really hard to advocate for change at the university level because they thought that just having a policy meant that they were doing a good job. But as you folks probably know now, because it's now 2 years later, just having a policy does not mean that you're actively addressing both rape culture and just sexual violence in general on your campus. And often in cases kind of getting together in groups and sharing best practices between campuses, because the other thing that we found was because there was no knowledge of these best practices, it was really hard to advocate for change at the university level because they thought that just having a policy meant that they were doing it. This is something that like is a study that as you folks probably know now because it's now 2 years later, just having a policy does not mean that you're actively addressing both rape culture and just sexual violence in general on your campus. And often in cases, if you have bad policy and you have bad procedures, you actually end up re-traumatizing someone in a way that is actually even more emotionally distressful than the original trauma. This is something that like is a study that a Stanford professor is looking at right now, which is really helpful for those of us who know that this happens. And now we're going to actually have academic we worked at that point with resources backing this up. And basically what it was, and we see things happen such as what happened last year with Concordia of what happens when you don't have proper policy to actually deal with these issues from our various grassroots. So that was kind of the whole background to this document, which is about a 40-page document that we published last October. And with CSU, as one of the signatories, we worked at that point with 20 student unions, and basically what it was is it was signing on to say that these student groups commit to actively addressing sexual violence on their campuses and using some of the best practices that we had gathered from our various grassroots communities from across Canada. And so found that the work that we ended up doing kind of an informal national committee what was encapsulated in the action plan. And in September of this year, we kind of transitioned into a more formal nonprofit structure, which is the Students for Consent Culture Canada. So we're the same organization, we just have a new name now. Because our work that we found basically when we published this, it took off in a way that we were not expecting. And we found that the work that we ended up doing largely went beyond what was encapsulated in the action plan, namely things that were in provincial and federal. In the national action plan, this is just kind of what it looks like for folks who aren't familiar with it. The best way that I put that, but that for me includes also like forms of like lobbyism activism and mobilization and direct action as well.
Wow, okay, that's actually really
Moral
good.
of the story is
Yay,
our
I'm
kind of
happy
way of
about
approaching
that.
these things is to
hopefully
give
it's
folks a
useful.
toolkit,
If it's not,
student
that's
activists
okay.
and
We're
student leaders a
continuing our
toolkit
work
to be able to
and, like,
use
the thing
what
about this
practices
work
work best
is,
on their
it's
actually
campuses.
changing very rapidly, because this is really
So
only
things that were
conversation
in
we've been having
an
on our
example of what was
campuses
in the
for
National
about
Action
2
Plan,
and a
this is
half
just kind of
years,
what
and
it
really
looks like for
probably
folks who aren't
last
familiar
year.
with it.
Can I just
So
this is something
has
that's
heard of
constantly
the
changing, and we're
National
constantly
Action
needing
Plan?
more tools and more resources. So we're hoping
Wow,
to be able
okay,
to
that's
consolidate
actually
the work
really
that's
good.
happening
Yay,
across
I'm
Canada
happy about
into
that.
one hub and be able to
Hopefully
share
it's
it.
useful. If it's not, that's okay.
across
We're
different
continuing our
student
work and
groups
we can
across
like
Canada the to thing kind of about save this some of the work labor that is we it's have actually seen changing very rapidly, because this is really only a conversation we've been having on our campuses
yeah,
for
so
about
this is just
2
kind
and
of,
a half
some of the
years,
stuff
and
in the
really
action
only publicly
plan.
for the last
It goes
year.
into like what is sexual
So
violence,
this
the
is
impacts of sexual
something that's
violence,
constantly changing, and we're constantly needing more tools
intersectionality
and more
and sexual
resources.
violence.
So we're
Again,
hoping
this
to be
these
able to
again are
consolidate the work that's happening across Canada into one hub and be able to share it across different student groups across Canada
it's
to kind of
3 main
save some of the
pillars
labor that
where
we
prevention,
have seen
support,
student groups
and
specifically
So
redoing
for the
over and over
first
again.
year,
That was
so
kind
yeah,
of
so
what
this
we
is just
mainly
kind
put
of
our work around,
some of the
but
stuff that's in
the
the
action
action plan
itself
itself.
is
It
very
goes
much
into like what is
focused on
sexual
campus
violence, the
level
impacts of sexual violence,
And
the thing that got us
intersectionality
really
and sexual
attention,
violence.
published
Again,
the action
these
plan,
again
was
are
the fact
supposed to
that
be
we were the
tools that
first
you can
group
use to
to
advocate for certain things
review
and changes
this
on your
like
campuses.
60 policies across Canada that existed.
It's
3 main pillars were prevention, support,
whether or not
and advocacy.
these policies
So
actually
for the
were
first
good
year,
or
that
bad.
was kind of what we
mainly put our
to
work
again
around,
kind
but
of go against
the
this
action plan
narrative
itself
of
is
we have
very
one,
much
therefore we
focused
will
on
work.
campus level advocacy.
So
and when
that
the thing that
kind of
got the most
spiraled,
media
and people
attention
took
when we
that,
published the action plan was the fact that we were the first group to review this like 60 policies across
and the
Canada
scorecard has
that
its flaws,
existed.
and we're very upfront about that, mainly
and
because
come
it
up with a
only goes on
scorecard
what's
to
on
grade
paper, and
whether
it
or
doesn't
not
actually go into the
these policies
implementation,
actually
which is the
were
rest of the
good
action
or
plan.
bad.
And so that was something that we found with
to
media
again kind of go against this
representation,
narrative of we have
by
one,
just
therefore
using
we're
the
doing
scorecard
good
and
work.
like taking away the rest of the
So,
action plan, it
made it
that
hard,
kind of spiraled, and people took that
for students to kind of advocate
very
sometimes with their universities,
seriously,
would be like,
even though it's
well,
only
we
about
got
2
2
plus,
pages
and
of
that's
the
good.
40-page action plan.
That's never good.
And
It's
the
like a
scorecard
nursing-
has its
like a
flaws,
nursing
and we're very
program. If
upfront
you
about
get
that,
anything less
namely
than
because
100%,
it
it's a
only goes
fail
on what's
because
on
someone
paper and it
died.
doesn't
Like,
actually go
it's a
into the
similar
implementation,
kind of,
which is the rest of the action plan.
So that was something that we found with
and so
media
that was something that when
representation,
the scorecard was
by
published,
just
we were
using
like,
the
"Ah,
scorecard
this is
and
something
like
we need to
taking
follow
away the
up
rest of the
after."
action plan,
I'll
it
get into
made
how
it
we're following
hard.
up that
The moral of the story
for
that
students to kind of advocate sometimes with their universities who would be like,
And
oh, well, we got a
here,
B plus
we
and
were
that's
told,
good.
despite
It's
the
like,
fact
that's
that
never
we're
good.
working
It's like a
on
nursing
finance,
program. If you get anything less than 100%, it's a fail because someone dies. Like, it's a similar kind of
So,
approach that we have, and so that was something that when the scorecard was published, we were like,
So
aha,
actually,
this is
on that
something we
note,
need to follow up
because
with after.
Concordia used to
And
have
I'll get
the
into
worst
how we're
policy
following up
that
with
I had
that.
looked at, but
The
recently
moral of the story, this is
I
kind of-
discovered University of Fraser
Yes.
Valley, who
something that
got a
happened here
20%.
was we were told, despite the fact
and
that
there's now
Concordia
the worst-
University
you
got a B
finally
minus,
are not the
that
worst policy
actually
in Canada
they
anymore,
just graded our
Concordia.
policy
Well done.
entirely wrong, and all the things they said were missing weren't actually
Just one of the
missing.
worst.
So, it's been a fun time.
Yeah, so actually on that note,
so
because Concordia
this is
used
kind
to
of
have
like
the worst
the work
policy
that
that
we
I had
started
looked
doing
at, but
with our campus is
recently
exactly this,
I
is
discovered
supporting
University of
student
Fraser
groups,
Valley,
and advocating
who
for changes
got a
at the campus
28%.
This quickly
and
turned
theirs
into
is
the
now
sense
the
of,
worst. You
these
finally are not the worst policy in
don't wanna
Canada
do
anymore,
what the students
Concordia.
are asking
Well
them,
done.
and actually don't want to take these student recommendations
Just
seriously.
one of the worst.
So that's when we started looking at prevention. And we're like, okay, what oversight mechanisms exist? Is there legislation? Is there not? Like,
so
what happens?
this is kind
when
of
a
like
school
the
doesn't
work that we
actually
started
enforce
doing
a
with our
good
turn was
sexual
exactly
violence
this, is
policy?
supporting student
And
groups
that
and
kind
advocating
of
for
launched
changes
us
at
to
the
the
provincial
provincial
level.
level. And we found ourselves
This quickly turned into the sense of, these administrations don't want to do what the students are asking them and actually don't want to take these student recommendations seriously. So that's when we started looking at the provincial level. We're like, okay, what oversight mechanisms exist? Is there provincial legislation? Is there not? Like, what happens when a school doesn't actually enforce a good sexual violence policy? And that kind of launched us into the provincial level, and we found ourselves being consulted by 5 different provinces across Canada on different legislation. How we kind of organize ourselves, it's very similar to the system of three pillars, but instead of prevention, support, and advocacy, And
we now have
it kind of changed the work that we were
the three
doing. So that's
portfolios are
why
education, outreach,
we
and
now have a new
advocacy.
structure as
So
Students for
I'm just
Consent
going to
Culture
explain
Canada
what
is to
each
better
portfolio
encapsulate and
does,
and the work that we have found ourselves doing beyond just what's in CAP's eye as chair scorecard, and the action plan, although we still do that work as well. From across Canada working so Students for Consent Culture Canada, so education, what they do, it's very similar to the system of 3 pillars, but instead of prevention, support, and advocacy, we now have 3 portfolios. And the 3 portfolios are education, outreach, and advocacy. So I'm just going to explain what each portfolio does, and needless to say, for all of these portfolios, basically what it means is I, as the chair, national chair, oversee these 3 portfolios that have teams of humans from across Canada working specifically on these projects. So education, what they do, I'm saying this also for if your own associations are interested in doing any of these things, we have resources to help you be able to do
And
something
how they
like
actually got it done, because
so,
I know,
education, there's kind of 3 main parts to education. The first one is under our conversation, but we developed a peer-to-peer led
one of the ways that we got so
active
many,
bystander, what is
trained
sexual
and
violence
training
that we implemented at Carleton University, and
through the student
in the
union,
last
we made
year
it
and
so
a
that
half have
student
trained about
clubs,
over 2,000 students.
had
That
to go
number's
through
actually
this
slightly
training
low,
in order to receive the
because they
second
just did their
half of
ones for
funding.
this year as well.
And
How they actually got it done,
because
because I
many
know,
students were
well, now
So
both
now
of our
we're updating the
institutions
training,
are looking
as I
at
said,
online
like, we're
mandatory
learning
training,
more
which is
all the
another
time.
conversation.
So we're
but,
updating it and then sharing it with student
one of the ways that we got
to
so many
implement on
folks
campuses
trained,
in our
and with a training that we
Um,
had approved,
the second part
and that
is
was
research and
student-led,
reports.
was
So that's something
through the
that
student union, we
is
made it so
majority
that
of my
student
time right
clubs
now.
had to go through this training
both
in
kind
order
of
to
our
receive the
babies.
second
So
half
the
of
first
their
one
funding.
is
in
we're
the second
doing
half of
a
the year. So
1 year
that's
later
how
report
so
that
many
kind of
students
just
were
goes
trained.
through and outlines all
So
the
now
work
we're
that we did
updating the
as an
training,
organization
as I
last
said, like we're
year.
learning more all the time.
It was
So we're
originally
updating it and then
supposed to be
sharing
out
it with
in
student unions to be able to
November of this
implement
year,
on their own
but it has
campuses in their own
quickly
way.
turned into like a 70-page
The second
document
part
because
is
there was
research
just
and
so much
reports.
that happened last
So
year.
that's something that
We're
is
going
the majority of
back
my
to
time
the
right
cutting
now.
process and editing process still, but I'll show you a little
It's both
sneak
kind of our
peek what it
babies.
looks
So
like
the
right
first
now. We have
one
a first
is
draft of it.
we're doing a
And
1 year
hopefully
later
it'll be
report
coming
that
out
kind of
sometime
just
in
goes
February.
through and outlines all of the
Um,
work that we did as an
and
organization in the
CSU
last
for
year.
The second
It was
research
originally
report
supposed to
that
be
actually
out
this is my
in
baby personally
November
is,
of this year,
we're
but it
gonna
has
do
quickly turned into like a
first kind of
70-page
research
document
report that
because there was just so much that
looks at
happened
the
last
culture
year.
of predatory professors on
So we're
campuses.
actively going through
And
the
comes
cutting
up with
process and editing
recommendations on
process
campus,
still, but I'll show you a little
provincial,
sneak
and
peek of
federal
what it looks
level
like right now
what
because we have a
actually
first
needs to
draft
change
of
in order to
it
change the
done.
culture that
And
exists
hopefully it'll
on
be coming out
predatory
sometime in
professors on
February.
campuses.
Because I find that that's
And
something we'll be partnering with CSU
less so
for this.
here because we've had so
And the
much
second research report that I'm
about
actually,
it in
this is my
Montreal
baby
compared to
personally,
other parts of
is
Canada.
we're
But,
gonna do
when we talk about rape
the
culture on
first kind of
campuses,
research report that
often
actually
folks
looks
automatically
at
go
the culture
towards
of predatory professors on
or
campuses.
frats.
And
And
comes
there's,
up
like,
with
the third
recommendations
part
at
that
the
I
campus,
find
provincial,
gets
and
really
federal
relevant,
level
which is
for
actually
what
the
actually
culture
needs to
of
change in
academia
order to
itself,
change the
which is
culture
bullying
that
and
exists around
sexualization of
predatory professors on our
specifically women of color
campuses.
in
Because I find that that's something
that leads to so many students
less so
dropping
here
out of
because we've
programs
had so
in
much
schools. And these are
conversation
visible
about it in
So
Montreal
we're trying to make
compared
those
to other
numbers
parts of Canada.
less invisible.
But
when we talk about rape culture on
campuses,
takes all the
folks
folks
automatically go towards
and
frosh
consolidates
or frats.
one
And there's like a third part that I find it gets really overlooked, which is actually the culture of academia itself, which is a culture of grooming and fetishization of specifically women of color in classrooms that leads to so many students dropping out of their programs or transferring
and then the
schools.
third
And
thing
these are
that
invisible
education
numbers
does
of it.
is the development
So
of
we're trying to
online
make those numbers
resources.
less
So
invisible.
on our website we have
and come up with a
bunch
report that kind of
resources
takes all the reports that have been happening at different
public.
universities and
Um,
consolidates
we
it and
want,
focuses
uh,
on this
you all to be
one
able to
problem
just
that we
access
have,
anything
and
whenever you need
again,
to.
develops tools for
to be able
students
to use,
primarily to be able to address this on their campuses. Because it
Um,
seems like no one knows
however
what
works best for your situation.
Um,
So that's education. The
I'll
second
talk
one is
about
outreach.
that a little bit
So
more
outreach
later.
has
And then the third thing that education does is the development of online resources for student leaders. So on our website we have a bunch of online resources, our kind of policies that everything is on their campuses.
One
We
like
want
something like that doesn't
you
really
all to be
exist
able
right
to
now,
just
and
access
one of the
anything
things
whenever
that
you
we're
need to.
finding by like going around
to
the
be able to
country
use
is that
how we wish.
for example,
or
however
however
works best for your situation.
So that's education. Everything
The
that's
second one
happening
is
at
outreach.
State Effects right now.
So
in Nova
outreach
Scotia,
has
again
they
three kind of
desperately
main
need a
things
peer
that it
support
does. The
network,
first
and they
one
wanna start
is
a student,
we're
like,
developing and
led,
maintaining a network of students
anti-sexual violence center
who are doing this work at the
administration
grassroots level
resources to put
on their
funding into it.
campuses.
One
So
was able to
something like that
connect
doesn't
with
really
SAS,
exist right now, and one of the things that we're finding by like
going
student run
around
organizations
organizations
is that, for example, I'll be in
practices of what to do in order to set up a
everything
So
that's
that's
happening
kind of
at
what we
State
want to do,
Effects
but we
right
wanna
now
put that
in Nova
into social
Scotia
media so that it
they desperately need a peer support network, and they want to start a student-led
kind of like share best practices and resources.
anti-sexual violence center because their administration refuses to put funding into it. So I was able to connect them with SAS, Student UBC, and Sacramento
So if
McGill
folks are
of
trying to
these
get in contact with us,
student-run organizations
your
that
first
have been
point
running
of
for
contact
like
is
20 or 30
and they will
years
direct you
to be able to share some best
who
practices
you
of
should
what
be
to do
linked with
in order to set up a similar thing.
project.
So that's kind of what we want to do.
We
but
kind of
want
have
to
a
put that
policy
into
of,
social media so that it doesn't
we
require
don't
our mediation.
partner with student unions in the
And
sense of, like,
folks
making
can kind of like
signing
share
up
best
or
practices
anything.
and resources in a more like
Because all of us have
informal
been involved in
and
the student
quicker
movement, and
manner.
so many
The
students
second one
just
is
never
direct
answer emails.
support of student
So,
groups and mobilizations.
if
So
you wanna
if
work
folks
with
are trying to
us,
get in
we'll work
contact
with
with
you. We
us,
just wanna get this
your
work
first
done.
point of
That's our
contact is
priority,
outreach,
more than,
and they
like,
will
saying,
direct
like,
you
we work
kind of
with,
who
X
you should
amount
be
of
linked
students,
with
so
to do
I
whatever
wasn't
project
working
that you're
with
interested in working with.
We kind of have a
And then the
policy
third
of,
thing that outreach does we
is,
don't
the
partner
upkeep
with
of our
student unions in the sense of
so
like
our
make
Instagram,
anyone sign an
our
MOU
Facebook
or
page,
anything,
our website, et cetera,
because
et
all of
cetera.
us have been involved in
And
the
then the
student
third
movement
one,
and know that that
is
takes so many
advocacy.
student unions just never answer your emails. So
So
if you want to work with us,
kind of
we'll work
as
with
I've
you.
been
We just
alluding
want to
to
get this work done.
our
That's our
slides, we
priority,
kind of
more than like
organize
saying like we
advocacy
work
on, again,
with
there's a running
X amount of
theme
student groups,
of
although I
student
will say we
everything,
work with 450.
unfortunately, that is how my brain organizes itself.
And then the third
So
thing that
campus,
outreach
provincial,
does
federal.
is
So we're advocacy
the
will
upkeep
keep
of
our
our communications and social media.
Campus
So our
level, it's
Instagram,
helping,
our Facebook page,
student
our
unions such as
website,
you
et cetera,
advocate for better policies on their
And then the
campuses.
third one,
So it's
is
things
advocacy.
like being something that was really
So
useful for us at McGill.
kind of as I've been alluding to with a
was,
couple of the past slides,
we
we
were
kind of
told
organize
by our
advocacy on it.
administration
Again,
that an
there's a
independent
running theme of
investigation
3
was
pillars to everything.
absolutely not
Unfortunately,
allowed
that is how my brain organizes
And you
itself.
folks had one, just down the
Through
street.
campus,
And we were like,
provincial,
well,
and federal.
they-
So what
they
advocacy looks like at
supported us,
those
so
3
I
levels.
think
The
you're
campus
lying to
level,
me.
it's
Turns out
helping
that we're
student unions such as
independent
CSU
advocate for better policies
that's
on their campuses.
pretty normal for this
So
work,
it's things
unfortunately.
like administrations are still very,
something that was really useful for us at McGill
and hitting the brakes around a lot of this work.
we were
and it's something
told
that
by
we
our
have to, like,
administration that an independent investigation was
build
absolutely
a
not
student
allowed
culture
under
of
Quebec law.
support,
And then you
in the
folks
best
had one
practices
just down
in
the
order to
street,
make
and we were like,
sure
well,
that similar things don't happen.
they said
Another
that
thing
they
actually
did, so
with,
I think you're lying
I was
to
just
me.
in,
Turns out they were, and we got
DC,
an independent
going
investigation.
around to different associations, and
That's
Simon
pretty
Fraser
normal for this work, unfortunately. Administrations are still very putting in the stops and hitting the brakes around a lot of this work.
because you know,
And
like,
it's something
the
that we have to
student
like
union is under the sexual violence policy.
really build a student culture of
they said
support
that to me, so I was able to
in
be
the
like,
best
no,
practices in order
absolutely
to
not.
make sure
Never
that
sign
similar things don't
like
happen.
an MOU
Another
with
thing
the
actually
university,
with
making the student union
I
part
was
of its
just in
jurisdiction.
there is
BC,
another option. We have
going
an
around to
internal
different
associations
violence
and
policy at
Simon
SMU
Fraser
that we can
University,
give to you
their
to be
student
able
union
to,
was talking about
well,
make
we're
into
about to
sign an
policy
MOU
that
with
works for
our
you
with
folks.
our
So just things like that.
our administration because
At the
you know
provincial
like
level,
the
this
student
is
union
when we
is
go
under the
into
sexual violence policy and that's a problem.
And
similar
thankfully, they said that to me, so I was able to be like, no, absolutely not. Never sign like an MOU with your university, like making the student union part of its jurisdiction.
And
there is another option. We have an internal
gender and
sexualized
sexualized
violence
violence
policy at SMU that we can give to you to be able to make into your own policy that works for you folks.
So just things
across
like
the
that.
province, but now we're kind of shifting
At the provincial
towards
level,
BC.
this is when we go into
and doing a lot of work in
Bill
BC to
151,
try and
or similar
mainly
legislation
two
across
things
the
that we
country.
see and
So there's actually
absolutely no
5 provinces in Canada that currently have sexual
one,
violence
minimum
legislation,
standards for
campus
these
sexual violence
policies that
legislation.
these required policies to have,
And
of which we
until
have 45, but we
some
narrowed it
recent
down to 11,
shifts in government,
of,
we
like,
thought Quebec
absolutely
was going to be the
necessary
place
ones.
where we got the most work
And
done
the second one is
provincially to be a
oversight
standard
So
across the province,
the
but now we're kind of
most-
shifting
the most
towards
obvious
BC
example
and doing a lot of work in BC
as
to try
per Bill
and
151
get
in Quebec,
mainly 2 things that we see in
all
absolutely no provincial
institutions,
legislation
all
at the
post-secondary
Canadian level,
institutions
which is
had
one,
to
minimum
have,
standards for these policies
an
that these
anti-sexual
required
violence
policies to
policy
have, of which we have
by
45, but
Two
narrowed it down to
institutions
11
did not do that.
of like
UQAM
absolutely
and,
necessary ones.
McGill.
And the second one is
there's
oversight
nothing,
mechanisms.
because there's no oversight
So
mechanisms in
the
legislation, there's nothing
the
to
most
hold
obvious
them
example
accountable
in
for
our
not
current
doing that.
context is
So
as
it's
an
an
assumption
assumption
of good faith
that
that
we're seeing
institutions
violate again
all
and again
institutions,
at a
all
provincial level,
post-secondary
and,
institutions
had
it's
to
also
have
one of the reasons
things
an
kind of
anti-sexual
stagnated
violence
until last
policy
year,
passed by
after
February 1st.
mobilizations,
2 institutions did not do that.
UQAM
UQAM and
which was done with
McGill.
lovely folks as well.
And
That was
there's
fun.
nothing because there's no oversight
Because
mechanism in the legislation. There's
I
nothing to
one of
hold
the
them
things that
accountable
we
for not
really
doing
pushed
that.
for when we
So it's an assumption of good faith that we're seeing institutions violate again and again at a division level, and it's also one of the reasons why things kind of stagnated at McGill last year after our mobilization.
And I invoked that, and
that is a
reported
photo of
McGill as to be in
which was done with
violation
you
of
lovely folks as
legislation.
well. That was fun.
Nothing was done. We
Because
received a response not
I
even from the minister directly,
one
but
of the
from
things that we really
telling us
pushed for
that the
when we were
minister
consulted
had
for
said,
legislation
was
was
we'll give oversight mechanisms, and what they did is they wrote a tiny little line that said the minister had the ability to intervene.
There is no way for
if
students to
she so
hold their
chose.
institutions accountable
And
for
I
not
invoked that,
implementing their own
and,
policies.
reported
that's, like,
McGill
why I
as
get,
to be
like,
in
this
violation
when
of
we're talking
provincial
about this,
legislation.
because it's just, like,
And
we're letting these
nothing was done.
institutions run
We received a
amok,
response
like,
not
no
even from the
violence,
minister directly,
and
but from the
media
province
needs
telling
to
us that the
step
minister
in.
had said
Because we're, like,
that
also,
well,
we're
like,
operating
we'll
at
give
that level.
McGill time, they'll
The next
figure
one is
it out.
federal. So how do we make
So
sure we have good
when we don't
provincial
have robust
legislation
legislation
mechanisms,
we go
there
to
is
federal.
no way for
So,
students to
one
hold
of our
their
members,
institutions
Caitlin, is
accountable
actually the
for
youngest
not
person sitting on
implementing
the
their
Gender
own
Violence
policies.
Advisory Council,
So that's
and
like
that's
why I
when
get like this when we
and
talk
the
about
youngest
this
by,
law,
like,
because it's just
15
like
years. That was like
we're
a
letting
huge
these
problem.
institutions run amok that we know
Thankfully,
are
they
violent,
let us on the council,
and
which is
the province needs
and
to step
we're
step
involved
step
right
in.
now in
So because we're like
the
also
national
operating at
framework
that
that's
level,
being set up by
the next one is
Canada
federal.
for
So how do we
campus
make sure we have good
sexual violence.
provincial
So this will
legislation?
What do we want
So we go to the federal
legislation,
level.
So
One of our members, Caitlin, is actually the youngest person sitting on the Gender-Based Violence Advisory Council in Status Quo Canada. And the youngest by like 15 examples of
That was like a
advocacy
huge
work
problem.
letters
And
to,
thankfully they let us on the council, which was nice.
and we're involved right
So
now
this
in
is an example for Bill 23,
the
and you
national
see that we did
framework that's
last
being set up by
January,
Canada
we've also done
for
several
campus
in
sexual
Quebec.
violence. So this will kind of outline what do we
one
want
of
in
the things
provincial
that we did
legislation
in partnership with
and
Quebec
campus
was we,
level legislation as
published
well,
a
as well as some of the best
policy
practices
guide. So this,
across the country.
again, in the whole spirit of creating
So
tools
advocacy
for students,
is very
we
busy.
created a guide that
Examples
actually
of advocacy
explains
work
Bill
are open
151 in
letters
accessible
to
language and actually very clearly outlines what does your institution
provincial
have to do
government.
and not
So
have to
this
do.
is an example for Bill 23, and you see that we did last
and how can it be interpreted
January.
in a
We've
way
also done
because
several
at that
in Quebec.
point, there had been no interpretation.
One of the things that we did in partnership with Quebec was we published a policy implementation guide. So this, again, in the whole spirit of creating tools for students, we created a guide that explains Bill 151 in accessible language and actually very clearly outlines what does your institution have to do and not have to do
push things
as per this legislation, especially like around how can it be interpreted in a way, because at that point there had been no interpretation of any of the language given by the ministry.
As I said,
How can you interpret it in a way that best
if you don't know that, you're not going to advocate for it. It's not your fault.
because of the
They're taking
turnover
advantage
in
of that.
students every year,
And we
we
just got
find that
legislation in PEI,
often,
which is it's not
universities
great
take advantage
legislation,
of
but
when,
for PEI standards, we're actually
positions
quite proud.
switch in student government,
and
that they
we're going to
push
actively
things
work
through
to
if you
make
don't
it
know,
even
and
better.
especially like around sexual
But
violence
that's
because
just
it's such a new
passing,
thing. If you don't know going in that you need face-to-face protections and you need
And
racial
as I said, the other
protections
thing
and
that
you
we
need
did
an
is
immunity
we
clause and
worked
you
with
need,
SMOO
as I said, there's
to do
45 things.
internal,
If you don't know that, you're not going to advocate for it. It's not your
Again,
fault
so
that
they're taking
that
advantage.
gap in jurisdiction on campuses.
And we just
is,
got legislation in PEI, which is it's not great legislation, but for
so
PEI
these are
standards,
resources
we're
that
actually
exist.
quite proud. There's a report that goes through the entire
we're
year
going
and
to
a half
actively
long
work
process.
to
We didn't
make it
creating
even
this
better.
policy.
But
There's
that
an
just got passed
implementation
in
guide that is
November,
helpful
which
with
is
graphics and little text that actually explains
And
how
as I
this
said, the other
policy
thing that
works
we
and how
did
the student
is
union
we
is,
worked with
going
SMOO
to
to
implement
do an
it.
internal
And then there's the actual
student union
policy
gendered and
itself,
sexualized
which is
violence
policy
policy,
jargon,
again,
but
so that
thankfully with the
that
implementation
gap in
guide, it's a little
jurisdiction
bit
on
more accessible.
campuses is
So all those are available on the SMOO
filled.
website.
And
And I can like send them to
So
anyone.
these
And
are
the whole
resources
point
that
of
exist.
project
There's
was to be
a
able to
report
share it
that
with
goes
other
through the
student
entire
unions
year and a
to
half
do
long
similar work.
process we did
And,
into creating this policy.
avoid similar
There's an
problems that we
implementation
had.
guide that is helpful with graphics and
So
little
what
text
now?
that actually
I've gone
explains
through a
how
lot
this
of it.
policy
The first
works
one is
and
the
how the student union is
predatory professors
going to
report.
implement it.
Second one is the one you're
And then
gonna
there's the
report.
actual
That
policy
is
itself,
currently
which is
what
a
our
report
title
full of
page
policy
looks like.
jargon, but
Again,
again,
that's
with
a
the
first draft, so
implementation
it might
guide, it's a
change,
little
but
bit more
that's your
accessible.
sneak
So all
peek.
those are available on the SMOO website.
We're working on the national
and I
framework.
can like send them to
We're
anyone. And the whole point
continuing
of
to
that
advocate
project was to be able to
provincial
share it
level,
with
but
other student unions to
specifically
hopefully do
focusing
similar
on
work
honestly
and
Bill 23 Bill
avoid
151
similar
we're
problems
waiting
that
to
we
see
had 2
how,
years
like,
ago.
the minister
So what now?
reacts to
I've gone
some
through a
of the
lot of it. The
implementation
first one is
things
the,
that are happening, and we'll
predatory
discuss
professors
from there,
report.
but whether
The second
or
one is the
not,
one year later report. That
there's
is
any
currently what our
possible
title page looks like. Again, that's a first draft, so it might change, but that's your sneak peak. We're working on the national framework. We're continuing to advocate at the provincial level, but specifically focusing on
all of
honestly Bill
this work,
23, and then Bill 151. We're waiting to see how like
questions in
the minister
All of
reacts
this
to
work
some of
last
the
year was
implementation
done
things that are happening, and we'll reassess from there. But whether or not
on a volunteer basis.
there's any point in us all reporting our
Last
institutions
year,
for being in violation
our
of this
chair,
legislation, which is a thought that I have.
from then our turn.
We're developing the
And
training and we're
we were
developing
so
the network.
nervous.
Now, because we are conditioned
Where to see us
as
come into
like,
this.
so
all of this work, I speak very quickly, so my apologies. You'll have a chance to ask questions in a moment.
Specifically
All of work was things that we just should be done anyway on our campaign,
because it
and on a volunteer basis.
and we were
so nervous to come to
last
CSU
year,
Council and
our
ask for
chair
money,
from then our
of
turn
those
came,
freaking
and
conditions.
we were
And
so
not only did
nervous
CSU Council give us
because
money,
we were
you gave us more
conditioned
than what we
as
asked for,
like,
and you were officially the only
especially
people who
women and
funded our
non-binary
labor
folks,
so far.
to not
So
value our
thank
labor,
you.
and to view specifically
I remember
anti-violence
I was on
work
the
as
receiving
things
end of
that we
the
just should
call
be doing
Caitlin, when
anyway
she
on
left
our
the CS
campuses
Council.
because it like betters our communities.
Feeling validated and
all
our
are
work
so
for the first
nervous
time.
to come to
And so that's why
CSU
we're
Council
partnering
and ask for
specifically with
money
CSU for the publishing of this
because
one-year
of those
report. Last year we
preconditioned
published
notions.
this new.
And not only did
Because of
CSU
the
Council
relationship
give
that
us
we
money,
You gave us more
and
than
this
what
year
we
to
asked
CSU
for, and
because
you
we're
were
honestly
officially the
so
only people who have
grateful.
funded our labor so far.
We had
So thank you.
Trans and Indigenous folks who were working
I remember
with us
I was on the
who couldn't
receiving
work
end
with
of the
us
call of
anymore because they
Caitlin
had to
when she
focus on
left the
getting
CS
paid
Council,
labor,
and it was
really sad.
feeling validated and all our work for the
funding
first
that folks were
time.
able to give us,
And so
we were
that's
able
why
to
we're
like
partnering
at least give
specifically with
stipends
CSU
for the publishing
to
of this one-year
support
labor
folks
report.
as they
Last
did
year we
this
published with
work,
SNU
because it's hundreds and hundreds
because of the relationship that we had,
hours
and this year it's with
of labor.
CSU because we're
But it's
honestly
really
so
important.
grateful,
And so
like
we're really
so
grateful.
grateful.
And that's
we
why,
had
more than anything, I wanna
trans and
hear from
Indigenous
you
folks who were
folks
working
of
with
what
us who
questions
couldn't
do you
work with
have?
us
Are there
anymore
tools that
because they
aren't
had
on
to
here
focus
that
on
you
getting
need?
paid labor, and it was
Do you
really
have
sad.
any, like, thoughts and
And
feelings
because
about what
of the
next
funding that
steps
you
are
folks
that
were
we
able
can
to give
help
us,
with you
we were
folks
able
on your
to like
campus,
at least give
et cetera, et cetera.
stipends
I don't have a
to
question slide, but
support
this is my
folks as they did
question
this
slide.
work because it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of labor. But it's really important, and so we're really grateful. And that's why, more than anything, I want to hear from you folks of what questions do you have? Are there tools that aren't on here that you need? Do you have any like thoughts and feelings about what next steps are that we can help with you folks on your campus, et cetera, et cetera? I don't have a question slide, but this is my question slide.
So usually when we do presentations,
questions about any of the work?
we'll let Connor do the, I guess, taking of questions, and you can have a question and then a
now.
follow-up, and then we'll move on to the next
Like,
person.
what would
And
be the next steps?
I don't know,
for
whatever
us?
is easier.
Yeah.
I can do a speakers list as well, or you can. But just so that everyone gets a chance to
very
speak,
shortly,
keep it to, like,
because
one question and then a
I
follow-up
don't think I have
question,
the
so that other
recent, the
people
most
can
recent draft.
pitch
I
in.
have a couple of drafts ago. So basically, it's
I'll let Connor take over.
under review. Are there any questions about any of the work? So I'm reviewing drafts to see if it's.
What do you think the
Yeah, go
CSU
for it.
should do, like,
So I sit on the
right
steering
now
committee
to improve?
of sexual,
Like, what would be the next steps for us?
campus,
Yeah.
and so I've been,
So this is
working
a
very
conversation
closely
we're
with
going to be having very shortly,
the
because
policy for
I
CSU,
don't think I have the most recent draft, but I have a couple of drafts ago. So basically, it's under review. And so I'm reviewing drafts to see if it's
policy.
push it forward. Yeah, go for it.
Before I sit on the standing committee of sexual violence, the fall semester started, we really just sat down and tried to look at like what best practices were for student unions. And in my opinion, the best thing we can do right now is to implement like a very comprehensive way of holding student representatives accountable for their actions, because as it exists, the methods and ways to hold people in our positions and people in appointed positions in the CSU are very limited due to the powers we have as an accredited student union. Even when people file complaints sat down and tried to look at like what best practices were for student unions. The most we can do, in my opinion, and the most the administration can do is ask the person to resign and implement like a very comprehensive way of holding student representatives accountable infrastructure. And in my opinion, and I don't think I would be alone in this, that's completely not enough. So as like CSU as an organization, that's step one is like get that policy implemented as soon as possible, and we have a draft that will be going to policy. Even when people file complaints to the university systems, for the administrative level, the most CSU can do, and the most now and forever is ask the person to hold administrators accountable to the things that they say in infrastructure and in my opinion and admissions and the ways that they that's completely not enough. So as like CSU as an organization, that's step one is like get that policy implemented as soon as hide behind legality and hide behind limitations and what's reasonable. The administrative level, the CSU students have asked and demanded forever needs to absolutely hold administrators accountable, and they need to actually listen to survivors and start putting their money where their mouth is and the ways that they funding the SARS.
So related,
intentionally
related
or
to that, I will
not,
like echo everything in there,
hide
and
facts and,
related to that too,
hide
like
behind
like concrete
legality
things as
and
well
hide
is
behind,
the internal policy. What's really great about
limitations
having
of
an
what's
actually robust
reasonable
internal policy
to
is
continually
things where like,
disappoint
well, it doesn't matter
students,
having an like
ask
you can
and
literally
demand for
point
over
to your
and
own
over again.
policy, like we're actually doing
And we need to
and
actually
we
listen
have
to
these things that you're
survivors
refusing
and
to put in your
start,
policy, and
putting
actually
their
more
money
students
where
are
their
using our
mouth is,
policy
especially when it
for
comes
that
to
reason.
funding SARC.
You know what I mean? Like you can actually show them what a good policy looks like if you develop one internally, because that's definitely something we faced at McGill. Related to that too, like concrete things as well. Why are you advocating like what's really great about doorstep, like that horrible narrative type thing, is things where like, well, because we had issues, but we dealt with them. You can literally, and now we have a policy. So that's actually very useful. And then the second thing that I would say of like what CSU can do to actually for that reason. Help change your policy. You know what I mean? Like you can actually show them what a good document everything. If you everything they say, every single like student who's willing to tell you what their process was like going through, because what actually happened and what's in the policy are always two completely different things. So you need to document everything of what actually is the student experience going through these policies, accessing these administrators, to be able to put it back in their face, be like, this is the student experience. And I'm actually just going to go back to everything. I forgot to mention it before. Everything they say. So the shit administrators say is a survey that we have right now, where we're doing exactly that. What we're wanting to do is actually document, because we've all been said such horrible things by administrators doing this work, and we want to actually document it to be like, actually, this is what it's like to do this work as a student advocate, like this is the student experience. And if we don't document these things, I'm actually just going to go back to shifts aren't going to happen quite the same way, because you're not going to have as much fodder. So yeah, so internal shit administrators say is a survey that we have right now, where we're doing exactly that. What we're wanting to do is actually document, because we've all been said such horrible things by administrators doing this work, and we want to actually document it to be like, actually, this is what it's like to do this work as a student advocate on this campus. And if we don't document these things, shifts aren't presented quite the same way, because you're not going to have as much fodder. So yeah, internal policies, document everything.
One more thing. The administration needs to absolutely stop making members of the standing committee on sexual misconduct and sexual violence sign non-disclosure agreements, so they can actually talk to the people they represent on that body without having to go through millions of bureaucratic filters to make sure that I'm not going to get sued with defamation. Thanks, Concordia.
So I'm just wondering.
Also, we tend to advocate for 30% student representation on any committee to do with sexual violence, so more than just one student in the room.
Part of your organization, and at this moment,
Those are some.
Or if our turn is working separately on the same subjects and issues.
Yeah.
So, two reports from December.
Very honest.
The organization ties with our turn.
Our turn doesn't.
So I'm just wondering
our
if
turn
you
national
managed to get
doesn't
access to
exist.
the research
It
that you have
was
with
a
our
human
turn,
and her mom.
whether that is part of your organization, and
it,
at this
like,
moment,
yeah, it's not doing work.
you're working with our turn, or
did
if our
not get
turn
our
is
intellectual
working
property back.
separately. on the
So
just like give a little bit of a
history
so people don't know.
I'm gonna just be very honest. We're told this tends to happen in student organization. It's just a really sad story more than anything. Our turn national doesn't exist. We had this very weird thing happen where and it like all it's not doing work. We did not get our intellectual property back by another member of the team.
Just like give a little bit of a
in a way
so people don't know.
it was just a very strange like, and it like lawyers got involved. We're told this tends to happen. Passwords were changed. It's just a really sad story more than anything. It's basically last year, which was really sad. We had this very weird thing happen where we have not gained that intellectual property back. However, thankfully, all of the members myself and another member of our team are intensely paranoid and had backups of everything by another member of the team. So there's an ongoing intellectual property battle in a way, but it was just a very strange like, and it like lawyers got involved and like passwords were changed to everything, and so we lost all of our like our email last year, which was really sad. And so like reaching out to that email, have not gained that intellectual property back. However, thankfully, myself and another member of our team are intensely paranoid and had backups of everything. So there's social media presence to intellectual property battle, but we do have not sure if that's all the documents did it about. The one thing that like is really sad is like our email, there's probably, I guarantee there's student groups like reaching out to that email for help, and like no one's going to respond to those emails, and it's really sad. So we're trying as best as we can to have like a more robust social media presence to redirect folks back to us so that these folks actually get support.
So,
I'm not sure if that fully answered your question.
when this,
or was there something else?
specifically the prof report, that's going to be something that we're going to be sending like calls for interviews and like surveys and stuff, so sharing that sort of information.
And we're going at how we can best
We
support you going
are
forward in your
also,
This thing about confidentiality
yes,
agreements.
okay, so
There's work that needs to be
when
done.
this, specifically the prof report, that's going to be something that we're going to be sending like
right now
calls
because
for
everyone's so
interviews
exhausted
and like surveys and stuff, so sharing
and one
that
of the
sort
things
of
that we need to
information.
figure out is like what actually is our best strategy for
We
Bill 151 moving forward
are
with this new
also
government specifically of how are we actually going to come up with ways to better
This thing about
legislation
confidentiality agreements
hold our
and
institutions and everything.
So
there's work that needs
those
to be done would be the two things that I would say right now that are kind of the focus is to do with
on
CSU.
having a rough time
Mobilizing the students right now because everyone's so exhausted from everything from last year. And one of the things that we need to figure out is like what actually is our best strategy for Bill 151 moving forward with this new government specifically of how are we actually going to come up with ways to better legislation to hold our institutions accountable. So those would be the two things that I would say right now that are kind of the focuses as to do with CSU.
what exactly are you looking for?
Yeah, keep using our resources and sharing them with other folks if there
So
are other folks
again,
that
sorry,
need
3
them.
pillars.
Like our Facebook page, if you would like.
Basically from my work on the subject, the 3
Sometimes
main
we post interesting things,
concerns
like
that
our
I
should
had,
admin say
or
survey.
question marks that people seem to have was one, which is the thing that I was talking about before, which is how predatory professors are a part of the rape culture on our campuses.
what-
And there's these
what
invisible
exactly
numbers.
are
It's
you
actually an
looking
access issue. The culture of predatory professors on our campus is an access to education issue. Again, sorry, 3 pillars. Second pillar is provincial privacy law. So basically from my work on the subject, the 3 main currently, if there is a complaint against or question professor or an employee of the institution, one which is the thing that I was talking about before, which is how predatory professors are a part of the rape culture on our campus.
Here's the
There's
tricky
these
thing.
invisible numbers.
No one
It's
can
actually
point
an
to me
access issue.
where in the
culture of
legislation it says
predatory
this.
professors on our
So this is an
campus
ongoing fight
access
that
to
I have
education
with
issue.
many lawyers across many provinces of like
Second pillar is provincial privacy law.
like I've
and
like honestly
labor
I've
law.
asked so many
And
like there's
how
no one ever just
currently,
like privacy
if there
law
is a
which
complaint
there's
against
I've
a
gone
professor
through them
or an employee of
and
the
I've asked
institution,
Well,
you
it's
will
not
never
actually
find
in the
out the
privacy
result of
law.
that complaint.
It's in like reams of
here's
case
the tricky
file on
thing.
it. And I'm like,
No one
okay,
can
so which
point to
case
me
files? Because
where
I
in the
would like to look
legislation
at
it
them,
says
and then
this.
they never get
So this is
back
an
to you.
ongoing fight that I have with many lawyers across many provinces.
literally in every province across Canada. Like it's like so that
That's specific.
like
I
I've
like
the
honestly I've
second
asked
part
so many
looking
like there's
at,
no one everyone just
laws
is
to try
trying
to
to
figure
figure
out
out
actually
which
which
there's 3
nail down
I've
where
gone
these
through
things are.
each of them.
And then the third one is
And
the
I've
role
asked
of unions on campuses.
Well,
In
it's not
terms
actually in the
of like
privacy law.
we have
It's in
it's
like
different at Concordia and
reams of
Miguel, I'm
case
just gonna use
file
those
on it.
examples
And I'm like,
because
okay,
of
so
that
which
are
case
but,
files? Because I would like to
because,
look at them, and then they
profs
never
at
get back
Concordia are
to you.
unionized, profs at McGill are not. Exactly. Looking at that issue, literally in every province across Canada. Like it's like so differently with
specifically
unionized and
is
non-unionized
the
members.
second part
And
of
we
looking
had
at,
issues at
law
McGill
and
where
trying to figure out
actually like predatory
nail
professor
down
filed
what these things
complaints
are.
against
And then the third one
other
is the role of
professors,
unions on
and the union
campuses.
supported
In
that
terms
professor,
of
but
like
refused
we
to
have
speak to
it's different at
the other
Concordia
ones who
and
were
Miguel. I'm just going to use those examples
it's
because
not a
that's our
union,
home
it's
turf.
an
But
association.
there's
Because,
a complexity of
profs at
labor at
Concordia are
Miguel
unionized,
is added
profs
to
at
this,
McGill
but
are not.
kind of
Looking
going
at
into
that
some of
issue
those things
and how
these complaints
also
go
specifically
differently
differently
to
with
standards of
unionized and
workplace
non-unionized
investigations.
members, and we
And
had issues
how
at
we
McGill
can
where
better these practices for
predatory professor
everyone
filed
so that
complaints
these
against
profs don't keep
other
suing
professors,
students for
and the union
defamation.
supported
Because this is a
that
problem we're
professor,
seeing.
but
So how
refused to
can we
speak
better
to
support
the other ones who
convince
were
unions that we're not
it's
just trying to get
unions,
after
it's
associations.
Sorry, there's a complexity of labor at
actually
McGill
work
is
with
added
unions
to
to
this,
make
but
more robust
kind of going into some of those
policies and
things
procedures
and
also
investigation
specifically how it relates to
so that
standards of
they're able
workplace
to actually fully
investigations.
support their members
and
and
how
don't
we
see
can
us as
better
a-
these
an
practices
adversary.
for everyone
ultimately
so
we're
that
unions
these profs don't keep suing students for defamation. Because this is
is a problem that we're seeing. So how can we better support, convince unions that we're not just trying to get after people's tenure, B, actually work with unions to make more robust policies and procedures and investigation standards so that they're able to actually fully support their members and don't just see us as an adversary. Because ultimately we're unions too.
So there was Eduardo and Marlene. Just so you know, it's we're about an hour in developing is within the CSU and not the university. And we're at a first separate, like we're doing, Sophie's doing work on a university committee about the university policy, and we're doing our own policy just within the union
If we're developing our own policy,
Will it apply to
has
council,
Concordia shown a
executives,
willingness to adopt our policy?
Does that clarify your question?
I can clarify that.
So basically, the policy that we're developing is within the CSU and not the university. So it's separate, like we're doing, Sophie's doing work on a university committee about the university policy, and we're doing our own policy just within the
Universities
union
are supporting you guys, like, mainly,
For
but
example,
I'm talking about
council,
Quebec, like I was talking about, like, let's say,
staff.
University of Sherbrooke, stuff
Does
like
that
that. Like,
clarify
are they
your
also, like, really supportive of your group, and are they included in your data?
Okay, so the main groups that we work with in Quebec are McGill, Concordia, Université de Québec à Rimouski, and UQAC, mainly just because those were, and PGSS, which is our grad student at McGill, and SRC, sorry, it's really hard for me to say C's and S's, and it's my initials, which is Bishop's University. We do have affiliations at UQAM. Obviously, because it's a more decentralized system, we don't necessarily have work with student groups. It's more that we work with specific students to reach out to us. And PGSS, which is our grad student. They have their at McGill, and study that they're doing. So they have actively been consulting with us, and we presented at a research panel last May with them, which was slightly odd because we were the only students invited to speak on this issue of campus sexual violence, which honestly we're finding ourselves in a lot. So most of our advocacy work, honestly, in Quebec has been groups. It's more like there are other students groups doing this work. You can't just have one token. They have their student survivor-led group. You actually study that they're doing. So they Québec contre les violences sexuelles. We work with presented at a research panel last May with them, which was slightly odd because we were the only students invited. So there's also this other thing of a bunch of unions, which honestly we haven't explicitly done work with, but most of our advocacy used our work in Quebec has so being like there are other students groups doing this work. They have all used our work in order to do advocacy, which is like the point. We like that, but we haven't officially partnered with them on projects. Québec contre les violences sexuelles we work with, or have done work with in the past.
Thank you very much, Connor.
And that's how you know if anyone has any follow-up questions. So there's also this other thing of a bunch of unions we haven't specifically used our work. So FICU, UAC, they have all used our work in order to do advocacy, which is like the point. We like that, but we haven't officially partnered with them on projects.
Thanks so much. Drew, you're going to present for C's? Okay. Do you need the computer? Thank you very much, Connor.
And that's how you know if anyone
Well, yeah, I was going to pull up the website maybe.
you just move it to PC.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
No, because she had just
Do you guys need to vote? Folks need to vote on anything or anything, or if I just go?
Oh yeah, you can go.
Okay, great.
All right, everyone. We're into our second presentation.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's okay.
no, because she had just
Great. So thanks for having me, CSU, and thanks John for accommodating our last minute request. My name is Drew Jay. I'm a member of C's, which is the Solidarity Economy Incubation Zone.
Oh yeah, you can go.
So I'll just pull up the website to see if
We're
some
into
kind
our
of
second
visual
presentation.
aid here. So what C's is, some of you are familiar, we aim to create new solidarity economy organizations, sort of last minute requests, sort of in and around Concordia University. My name's Drew. But also to build the solidarity economy in general. So the solidarity economy, for folks who aren't familiar, so I'll just pull up the website, the very kind of visual version, is based on principles of equity in all its dimensions, democracy, and ecology. So create new solidarity economy organizations. So we want to make sure that so basically it's rearranging the economy and building an economy from the grassroots to build a solidarity economy in general. So that solidarity economy for folks who aren't actually redistributes wealth. And increases equity and inequality is and equality based on principles of equity and its dimensions and is run on democratic principles. And ecology. So the current economy where we basically have we want to make sure that $1 so basically it's rearranging the solidarity economy, building one member economy from the grassroots up, and of course ecology. So that responds as we know, facing the climate crisis redistributes wealth, radically change, increases equity and inequality. Mental model as well as our economic equality, and is sustainable and is run on democratic principles. So CSU is actually a leader where we basically have decisions in the solidarity economy. I would say in Canada, but also solidarity economy probably in North America in terms of the number and of course ecology. So path-breaking, facing organizations that have been generated, radically changed sort of in and around our whole sort of Concordia student mental model as well as our economic model. So just some examples: the Woodnote Housing Cooperative. So CSU is actually a leader, the Hive in the solidarity economy. I would say in Canada, but also a solidarity co-op. Probably in North America. People's Potato, the Frigo Bear. These are all examples of solidarity economy path-breaking organizations that have been generated. So what we hope to do around to Concordia students to create to multiply the number of opportunities for people. So just some examples: the Woodnote Housing Cooperative organizations and businesses, but also to start to think about how we can not just sort of fill in the sort of gaps where People's Potatoes, but actually all examples. Start to build a movement that can transform the economy into something that's more livable for everybody. So what we hope to do is to create. So Seas itself aims to support the creation of more of those for people, those kinds of businesses, and to build a movement organization. So the businesses, kind of 4 dimensions of our activities, our proposed activities, are education, research, just sort of fill in the gaps. I won't go into those. You'll be hearing about, but actually, I think start to build a movement that can transform the economy. Seas is something that's more livable for every levy this year. But I want to focus on the education. So support the creation of more of those kinds of businesses and to build a movement. So the kind of 4 dimensions of our activities our proposed activities are education, research, advocacy, and development. I won't go into those. You'll be hearing about those, I think, soonish, because we're Seas is applying for a fee levy this year. But I want to focus on the education. So the thing we're actually applying for momentum toward a grant from the Silkworm 4 is the 8-week curriculum that we run, which is really an attempt to put people who work on the solidarity economy in touch with each other, do a deep dive into all the principles and historical and current examples of the solidarity economy, to understand it better and to create momentum toward working for it. So basically, our last grant, we did this 8-week curriculum last semester. We got about 50 applicants. We ended up with the cost of running the curriculum. We accepted 25 people into the class. We got great feedback from everyone. People stuck it out to the end. I was frankly surprised. And I think the last semester people really got a lot out of it. $5,000. So basically, this grant, we're asking for $2,000 from unpaid labor fund. Would allow us to cover the cost of running the curriculum again this semester, including development of additional modules, food for participants, bringing in an indigenous speaker, facilitation, coordination, graphic design, and printed materials. So last semester we spent over $5,000 developing the curriculum. I mean, this is obviously including a ton of unpaid labor. Sorry, do you have a question? Yes. Okay. We spent over $5,000, and that's obviously not including a huge amount of unpaid labor that kind of went into this. This term, it's just a little over $3,000. So we're hoping to get some support to put it on this semester.
Whereas in November 2015, Concordia students approved via a referendum the following question: Social Economy Incubator.
Yes.
Do you, as a member of the Concordia Student Union, support the CSU employing its resources,
Yes.
including a portion of the student space, accessible education, and legal contingency fund, to
folks
establish
can
an autonomous
toss this on the table
Concordia-based
and do the
solidarity
other
economy
questions.
incubator that would primarily engage students through the support, development, study, and November 2015, so that was passed a referendum and approved via a referendum the following question. Whereas the Social Economy Incubator Zone, or SEAS, is organizing an 8-week certificate course available to Concordia students titled Fundamentals of the Solidarity Economy, Participatory Education for the Accessible Education and Legal Contingency. Whereas the expenses for this workshop series are projected to be $3,490, of which there have already engaged $1,490 and are requesting $2,000 promotion of democratic. And whereas SEAS has included documentation regarding their initiative for the CSU Council to read and consider. Whereas the Social Economy Incubator Zone, or SEAS, is organizing. Be it therefore resolved that CSU Council approve a grant of up to $2,000 from the student space, accessible education, and whereas the expenses for this workshop for the fundamentals of the solidarity economy, participatory education for the economy, already series organized by SEAS, and are requesting $2,000. This resolution shall be submitted to the Silk Fund Committee for consideration regarding their initiative for the CSU Council to read and consider. It's in the meeting package. If folks haven't got that, please let me know. Be it therefore resolved that CSU Council approve a grant of up to $2,000 from the student space, accessible education. Normally, these types of smaller funding grants would become the solidarity economy to either the education, a relevant discretionary committee organized by SEAS, possibly the finance committee. This resolution shall be submitted to the Silk Fund Committee for consideration at its student space, accessible education, legal disease. It's a separate fee levy that the CSU runs. It goes into this big fund that's usually used for like student renovations, building projects, or if we get sued for something really huge and we have to pay legal settlements. That's what it's there for. These types of it's not used for day-to-day operations or projects here and there, with some exceptions. Relevant discretionary committee. In this case, there was a specific referendum saying, can we use this fund, but the Silk Fund, to help out social economy incubator, space, accessible education, it's a separate. So in this case, the CSU, they can use the Silk Fund. It goes only approve big expenditures from the Silk Fund by getting a 2/3 vote. Or if we get council or something really huge, subcommittees of council can't approve from this. That's what's there for. It's not used for day-to-day operations or projects. Motions on the table with some exceptions. There's a referendum in favor of referendum this fund has $10 million in it, by the way, to help out social economy small. Isn't that? So in this case, series of workshops can use the Silk Fund, but you can only approve expenditures from the Silk Fund by getting a 2/3 vote at council. So if subcommittees of council can't approve from the Silk Fund.
2-minute recess where she can set up.
That's why we're here. So as a motion on the table, there's a referendum in
Thanks,
favor of
Jared.
using this
Okay.
fund, which has $10 million in
Everyone's
it,
good,
by
all
the
in
way.
favor?
So 2,000 is really small.
No objection.
Isn't that?
I'm gonna say that's fine. So open the door and let the real expert come in. So I'm just going to ask one of the motions.
If it's okay, we can reconvene now. So first of all, I'd just like to apologize for my own tardiness. It took 4 hours to get here from Ottawa, so that was really unpleasant. Thank you. That being said, I'd also like to extend the enormous praise to the council. So I'm really been to student council works. I think 28th. So you kind of have a little bit of a general sense of how things are going. In terms of Robert's rules, I know that nobody knows, like right now you probably don't know them super in depth, but don't let that hinder you from asking any questions or from making any statements. So I know Michaela told you if you want to say something, just raise your placard, and then there's a couple of ways to interrupt: point of privilege, point of information. Point of privilege being atmospheric, point of information being if you have a burning question that you absolutely need answered before we go on. That being said, just in terms of council comportment, respect is the name of the game, so when somebody else is speaking, you are not, and when somebody is speaking, make sure that you are speaking respectfully as well, or when you are speaking, sorry, make sure that you're speaking respectfully. No ad hominems, no insulting your peers. Is there anything else I can think of at the moment? Pretty much you just need to get into it a little bit and it'll make sense as we go along. So if I understand correctly, we are on point 5C, which is the C's presentation. Presentation was given and the floor is open for questions and comments. Yes, James.
So, I was just going to be on this, put it on the speakers list, but I guess I can
you know, I can start, just kind of correct me if I'm wrong, you're an organization that, apart from your activities as a startup funding startups, wants to do some education initiatives. Please explain this a bit more with the $2,000 we're going to give you.
Well, it's an 8-week course. It's offered to Concordia students and people in the broader community. It covers, I mean, the things I said it covers. I mean, did you want more detail on any of those points? Or?
So this is the course that is mandatory in order to become voting members of your organization, yes?
No. It's not mandatory to take the course.
So it's not the Solidarity Economy.
Sorry? No, this is a course that's offered by C's, but it's not. This isn't. It's not a requirement to take the course to be a member of C's.
Thank you. Jane?
Just had I guess two and a half questions. The first one is in terms of the courses that you offer, are they offered for free or are they offered on a paid basis? And the second question is, what is your gross revenue / net revenue?
Gross revenue / net revenue. So the first question, we asked for it was a $20 pay what you can the first semester. So and no questions asked. So we said anybody who doesn't want to pay is absolutely welcome to take the course. And we plan to do the same thing this semester. Obviously, it makes it if we with support from the CSU, it makes it a lot easier to do it that way. But in any case, no one is turned away for lack of funds, and we don't we basically just put a hat out and say if anybody wants to give the recommended amount or any amount up to that, you're welcome. But so there's not any kind of pressure. In terms of gross revenues, I mean they're the same. I don't remember the exact figure it was a little over $5,000. We definitely spent all of that. And we had anything that any other kind of grant money that we had kicking around was put toward this semester. So that's where the $1,490 came from. And we plan to spend all of that on the provision of the course. And obviously that leaves a lot of volunteer labor that was unpaid, but yeah, we don't plan to make a profit.
Thank you. Paige?
I'm just wondering what the second E in C's stands for.
You can use your imagination. It's either the last E on zone, or it could be for entrepreneurs if you want to get fancy.
Yeah. Thank you. Margot?
I'm wondering I have two questions. One, I've taken a look at the budget that you sent forward, which is not particularly clear about where you're getting these numbers. So I was wondering if you could clarify a little bit more about why creating the curriculum is going to cost a certain amount and stuff like that. And I'm also wondering who is going to be creating the curriculum, and is it this same curriculum from last year? If so, why is it costing more, and what do the people who are creating the curriculum, what qualifications do they have?
Sure. So the curriculum, there are 4 course facilitators, all of whom have a considerable amount of experience in the solidarity economy. There's Erica Licon, who is a sort of PhD student here and who has actually been involved in a solidarity economy incubator and as well as several co-ops. There's Ben Prunty, who's one of the founders of the Hive and also really involved in a tree planters co-op. There's myself. I've been involved in several co-ops as a co-founder for over a decade. And then there's Chloe Raxlin, who has kind of a long history of experience with working with youth, but has also been involved in the startup of at least 2 co-ops that I know of.
Which co-ops? Sorry.
Which co-ops has Chloe been involved in?
Everyone, because I only hear the Hive.
So for me, it's the Media Co-op, which is a cross-Canada network of cooperative media outlets that started in 2003. And I also helped start a cooperative called Journal Ensemble, which is a French language newspaper that's owned by journalists. The journalists are members, which ran for about 5 years and is the website is actually being revitalized at the moment. Let's see, Chloe was involved in Press Start and Tiger Lotus cooperatives. Ben was involved in, as I said, the Hive and also the Tree Planters Co-op. I can't remember the name at the moment. It's forthcoming, but it's being developed at the moment. And Erica, I don't know the names of the co-ops that she was involved in, but she was involved in the Solidarity Economy Incubator in Mexico, and has been, supportive to several co-ops, and she's on the executive of her housing co-op, which is the Milton Park, community.
Thank you. Eduardo?
There was a couple of questions that weren't answered about the budget.
Do you want to just start by?
Sorry, can you remind me what the questions were?
So your budget isn't particularly clear about what exactly the money's going for and what how you got to those numbers.
Sure.
I was wondering if you could explain.
The $250 for the creation of a new curriculum. So I think you asked before about the creation of a curriculum. So we did run the course. We had developed, of the 8 modules, we had developed a number of them, but we didn't. There are some updates that we wanted to make in terms of developing them more, and so the number for the updates is $250 each, which is $25 an hour for 10 hours, and that's quite a bit less than people put in, but it's basically a nominal honorarium for curriculum development and also delivery.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just on that note, to keep things rolling, usually we do 1 question and 1 follow-up. So if you have a follow-up, just kind of like motion it, and I'll let you speak twice. Eduardo.
This course that you're offering, is it certified by any board or government certification at all, or?
No, it's certified by us.
All right. Thank you.
James.
All right, yeah, so to more about your organization, your name is SEAS. I just, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's correct to kind of assume that it stands for, or it's a backronym, meaning it's like an acronym that's been tacked on for something along the lines of seize the means of production?
I think that's an illusion that we would like to
so
make, yeah.
That's kind of the principles of your organization are fundamentally very Marxist in persuasion.
I wouldn't presume to speak for the whole collective. I think what we mean by seize the reason we would like to refer to seize the means of production as, or invoke that implicitly, is that we feel like the economy is being run in a way that's incompatible with the continuation of human life on Earth, and that we would like to run it very differently. And in order to do so, we need to not only create the means of production to create self-directed economic activity that's democratically run, but also we need to create we also need to talk about the economic activity that's already happening and change the way that's run as well.
Thank you. Sorry, Lee? Oh, sorry, do you have a follow-up, James?
A follow-up to that. So are you going to put in mechanisms in your organization to ensure that the organizations that you are going to, in the capacity that you're going to act as a startup funding startups, are you going to ensure that those startups are actually growing and succeeding in the market, or are you just going to rely on the solidarity economy?
So, I mean, we find the market to be the part of the difficulty of creating a solidarity economy, in the sense that one has to, one ends up sort of self-exploiting if one operates only on the basis of a market. So part of the point of a solidarity economy course is to talk about all the ways that we can insulate different new organizations from the kind of market which tends to drive down wages and socialize costs. So yeah, I certainly think that the market is a reality that we have to contend with, but part of our efforts are to create the means to circumvent the more pernicious effects of market discipline.
Thank you. Lee?
Hi.
Question. So most businesses, when they're looking for investment, which you can consider this an investment being that weird, if we do give you money, it goes towards your business. So my question is, with potential follow-up, do you have a business model or business plan which you hope to follow out, whether it's looking in 3 years in advance, saying this is where we want to be from where we're right now?
Yeah, so the thing we're asking for money, I wouldn't say it's a business, that we're asking for this, like what we're talking about right now is not like fund our business. Right now is like, we have a course that we want to put on, here's what it is, would you like to fund that? It's sort of like a project, basically. In terms of the broader C's vision, yes, absolutely, we have a 3-year budget and a whole kind of plan of different activities and so on, which we're not really talking about right now, but we will talk about in the very near future, and I'd be happy to talk to you outside of this. Yeah.
I can continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my follow-up is, you mentioned that, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't plan on having a profit for this year. With the business model you have in mind, will you be having a profit future? Do you think that's something that you can do?
I mean, I think we want to run it on a non-profit basis. We're not interested in creating we don't have shareholders, and so we're not trying to create value for shareholders. We're trying to create value for the membership, and that's so the difference between a kind of a shareholder-run private business is that you put money in, you expect to get money out. With the cooperative, it's a little different. People create value together through their activities and through their membership, and then they all benefit from the activities of the co-op, and they all direct those activities together. So it creates space for a different kind of way of orienting toward economic activity, and that's really the fundamentally what we're all about. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a speakers list of Danielle, Arad, James, Margot, John, and then Sam. Danielle?
I just wanted to clarify, like, you were funded by SAF last year for the same course? For this 8-week course?
Yeah.
So do you guys have any, like, success stories from last year in that course? Like, anybody who went out and, like, actually ran their business and, like...
I mean, it wasn't, like, the point of the course wasn't to get people to the point of starting a business. I feel like that's a much longer process, and I would say a success story for a business takes at least a few years to get to that point. So I would love to say that I have success stories a few months down the road, but I don't. What I can say is that I think a lot of people are energized and are working on projects and are sort of, and several of the people who were in the course, and this is the intent of the course, was to connect people with each other, so that there's a mutually supportive network where people can start to generate proposals, generate ideas, and be supported, not just by an institution but by their peers in doing so. So that's really the idea behind it, and I think we've been successful in that sense. And certainly there are projects that people are working on. Nothing I can really announce, but certainly there are a number of things that are kind of in the works as a result. Yeah.
Thank you. Arad?
Could you sell me on your business model and the way that funds are being used? What I mean is for C's overall and not just for this particular project. And so when I say, first and foremost, when I say business, I don't mean just for profit. I understand you're not for profit, so just your plan as a whole. And as well, why I'm asking this is that funds that, the reason you're coming to us today and asking for funding is because the rest of your business, I'm assuming, is not able to fund it by itself, and so you need our support, which is fine. I just want to know that a little bit of the context of everything that you have as a business plan.
context. I mean, I'm a little
Outside of the
I'm a little
project.
hesitant to get into. I mean, I think we're going to be talking about that soon. Like we're applying for a fee levy, and there's a whole set of documentation and stuff around that will be voted on by students at large, and so there will be room for discussions in there. I mean, I can tell you that in general, what we aim to do with the bigger project, and so to be clear, not what we're talking about here in terms of the proposal that I'm putting forward today. Or I guess that John's putting forward, is the traditional incubator basically takes you know the kind of status quo and the way the current economy works as the sort of baseline, and I think a big part of the problem is that people don't know what a solidarity economy is, and so I think in terms of the business model or the way that we want to be successful is that we want to create a baseline of understanding, like a critical mass of people who understand this different way of doing things and how it actually works in real life. There are lots of real life examples that are huge businesses that run on this model. In fact, I was just in JMSB building the other day, and like the Mouvement Desjardins is sponsors several of the rooms, and that's a gigantic business that's run on solidarity economy principles, and is one member, one vote, not $1, one vote. So the education part is really to create a critical mass of people who understand that and can support each other, and then the idea is that from that pool of people, different projects will emerge, and then we can support those with technical support, with business plan development, and all the things that conflict resolution skills, policies, support from other co-ops, experiences in cooperative businesses, and so on, so that people can create those projects successfully. I mean, I could get more into it, but I think that's the basic.
Yeah, just like a quick pitch. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, so I guess 2
Jane?
points. John.
No, Jane.
Oh, I'm sorry. I get used to the new people being seen.
Hi. So I just have a question about this motion that's on the table regarding this course. So will the course still be able to happen? Will you still be able to put it on if you did not receive funding from the CSU for it?
Yeah, I think we'd find a way. It would be lessened, I would say, but I don't think that we would. I think we're pretty committed to running the course, and obviously it's the kind of fine bits of grant money here and there model isn't super sustainable, but we feel like it's important, and we're committed to all the facilitators are committed to developing the course and carrying it forward into the future. So, yeah.
Thank you. Now, John.
Okay. I just want to remind folks that we're supposed to be debating what the motion on the floor is, which is specifically funding for this workshop series. It's not necessarily about, we're not debating whether or not to give C's core funding for the whole year. We're not debating whether or not we think they should have a fee levy. Those are things that will come up later and we'll be able to discuss. But whether you vote yes or no is not casting judgment on those things. So what we're debating is whether or not we think this particular set of workshops has merit. Everybody gets to have an opinion about that. If you think that the case that this will be a good service for students, you vote yes. If you think it doesn't, you vote no. But I just want to remind folks that the CSU provides a lot of funding for a lot of different and very diverse groups. The only reason this goes to council versus a subcommittee is specifically because the Silk Fund requires that it comes to council. Normally this would go to the clubs committee or the special projects fund committee through student life or something like that. But if you don't like a group's politics, that's legitimate, and you can vote your conscience every time. I'm just appealing to folks to consider that we do fund a diverse amount of groups. That we fund the Israel Club, we fund the Palestine Club, we fund the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP, stuff like that. So the question is, do you think that this is a useful use of student funds to provide a service for students for this specific set of workshops? And vote accordingly.
Okay, thank too, so I'll try to keep it a bit more on topic. Margot?
I'm a little bit confused the relevance of these workshops, just because the Concordia Food Coalition exists, and like in its mandate, it's mandated to like foster these spaces in Concordia that are like food spaces or like economic spaces that are like not multinational companies and stuff like that. Like that's in their mandate. And the lovely coordinators who work there, one, are not paid $25 an hour, two, like will give this information that they have for free, and also connect people with like other folks who have been involved with different cooperatives and stuff like that for free. So I'm wondering why create a separate entity for this and fund it separately, rather than you guys supporting groups that already exist and like banding together in solidarity with people, rather than siloing yourself and offering these workshops for free through the Concordia Food Coalition.
So there are a few things in there. One, I just off the top, I mean, you can strictly speaking, you can say that we're paying ourselves $25 an hour, but I mean, I can tell you that it's absolutely comes, like if you added up all the hours and divided it by the amount of money, it comes out to considerably less than that. It's, you know, sub-minimum wage for sure. So I was just saying that as how we arrived at the estimate. It's also a discrete contractual labor, so it's not. I don't think it should be judged on the same as like a salary, for example, that's stable. In terms of your larger question, yeah, I mean, absolutely, we want to, and I think we do operate in solidarity with lots of different groups. Certainly, a number of the people involved have been involved in the Concordia Food Coalition and the Hive, the Co-op bookstore, a variety of other initiatives. So I think I would push back a little bit against the characterization that we're siloing ourselves off. That's not what I see happening. In terms of why this in particular, I feel like we felt like we had something to add that was a kind of a deep look at the solidarity economy and a chance for people to really, you know, not just have an info session or like a one-off workshop, but to really go in depth on the principles of the solidarity economy, some of the historical and current examples, and some of the skills, the skill building that's involved. And we felt like we had something to add that wasn't there, and that's why we created this course.
Yeah. Just if you guys are looking for further resources, I'm sure those folks would love to have speakers at Bite Me or Transitions, or like one of the speaker series which talks about stuff like this and like alternatives to a capitalist economy, especially centered around food. So if this doesn't work, yeah.
Yeah, we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate, so thanks.
Thank you. Sam?
Since we're representing students, do students want to take this class, and do you know how many?
Yeah, the applications, last I checked, I mean, the deadline is today, extended, I think, for a couple days. But last I checked, it was about 50-50 Concordia students and community members. Yep.
Thank you. Patrick?
Okay, so I didn't quite understand whether this money would be used to improve the course or to teach it again. Could you answer that for me quickly?
Yeah, absolutely, both.
All right, and then the money being used to improve the course, what exactly are you looking to improve, and why does it need that type of money?
The total amount for improvement is $750, okay. And that's basically just filling out we did like there's like a giant reading list, so filling that out and making sure that we have the best resources on that. It would be developing kind of participatory learning exercises, so giving people to really refining the design of in terms of the learning outcomes, giving people the chance to bring their own knowledge, but also so a lot of time goes into designing participatory curriculum. And also just like, researching the different examples, bringing in, making sure that we are able to convey and also have the background to answer all kinds of different questions about in terms of supporting the participants' development. So a ton of work goes into that. I mean, I think, the $5,000 that we spent developing it before is like, if you look at, similar kind of courses, like I think it's pretty cost effective.
Yeah, so 750 to improve the course and 1,250 to teach the course?
To run it. I run through the items if you want me to repeat them.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Michelle?
I call the question.
All right, do we have a second for calling the question? Jared, is there any opposition to calling the question?
Thank you.
Okay, so that carries unanimously. I'll narrate a little bit what's going on for folks who haven't been to council before. So when you call the question, it means that you're voting on whether or not you want to end discussion and take a vote. So since we had a unanimous consent about calling the question, I don't have to go raise your hands if yes, raise your hands if no. So the question has been called, so now we'll vote on the motion, which is currently on the table. So all those in favor of the motion that was read out by John, please raise your placards. Eight. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And abstentions. Yes. And since it's from Silk, John, does it need a 2/3?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so in that case, it does not get the requisite 2/3, 8 plus 6, 8 out of 14. Let me just confirm that before I do something silly. Yeah, okay, so it does not get the requisite 2/3, so the motion fails, and we're back on nothing currently. Does anyone have any other discussion? All right.
Thanks for taking the time.
Okay, so in that case, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for braving the storm as well. Yeah. Right, so since there's nothing currently on the floor, sorry, I did like a really quick makeshift introduction to council. So I'm just gonna give a couple of more points about how kind of council goes about doing business. So I'm going to send out a more formal email to all the new councillors soon, just because the way it was kind of set up, you all were voted in on Friday, and then I only got your emails yesterday, so that was a little bit not great. So I'll give you a lot more information by email, which is a lot better than me just saying it and then you having to remember it. That being said, when we're at council, so we use Robert's Rules, Parliamentary Procedure, one of the things that I'm really strict about and I really don't like is when councillors address each other by you. So you're all colleagues. So when you talk about somebody else in the room, you're not talking directly to your colleague, you're talking to the chair or to the room in general. So if you're presenting, look around, all that, or speak through me. So in no circumstance should you ever be speaking and saying, you said this, you said that. You can say, like, my colleague John said this, or the finance coordinator, or something like that. Because it's just really bad Robert's Rules, and it's also improper parliamentary procedure. In terms of when you're speaking as well, keep your language professional, so that means no cursing, and I will call you on decorum if you do that as well. There's a little bit more leniency for when we have a guest speaker. Obviously they don't know all the rules when they come in, so sometimes, unfortunately, they may drop a swear bomb, which we do not appreciate. And as well, sometimes they'll address by you, so we'll give them a bit of leniency there. The other thing, so when you're addressing your colleagues as well, don't assume their gender, so we use gender neutral pronouns. And anyways, you shouldn't be talking about your colleagues in any other way than like they said this, they said that. Yeah. As well, council ends at 11:30, so we took a motion at the beginning of the year that council can't go past 11:30. That being said, or council officially ends at 11:30. If there's something really pressing on the table, we can do a motion that requires a 2/3 to extend council, but we try to keep it as efficient as possible. If ever something happens and we end up at council until, I don't know, 1 in the morning, you can always requisition your taxis back through the finance coordinator, John, by submitting a check requisition. As well, in terms of procedure, We also passed a vote at the first council that when we're doing appointments, if there's more people nominated than there are seats, so for example, we're about to do appointments, there's one seat open on the External and Mobilization Committee. If 2 people apply, then we do a secret ballot, so that means we chop up pieces of paper and you all get to write somebody's name, and then Elizabeth and myself will go and count them. So that is very fun. In terms of appointments as well that we're just about to move into, a councillor resigned to me and I missed the date, so they had written, like, I resign as of January 31st, so I put their committees onto the appointments. From my understanding, Caleb, are you okay if we fill your committee seats? Okay, great. So Caleb is still a councillor until next council, and we will fill their committee seats. That being said, I think we can move straight into appointments. Are there any questions? Yes, John.
Any comments just about committees in general?
Yeah.
Every councillor is supposed to be on at least one. In practice, it's better to be on one committee and put a lot of time and effort into it than be on multiple committees and be okay at best at them all. So if you're really passionate and want to be on a lot and you have time, by all means, that's your choice to make. But you'll find that the workload builds up, so if you want to pick one committee, you'll have a better time than if you pick multiple. But again, it's your choice.
Thank you. And just to build on that as well, so committees are really where the expertise of the CSU happens. So instead of, like, say there's policy changes or anything like that, instead of going through every single policy change at council with 30 people giving input, that's why it goes through the policy committee, so that they can really study everything in depth, look at the pros and cons, look at the effects of everything that happens in a really smaller group of, I think 5 or 6 people all together. And that way, there's like the policy experts looking at it, not an entire council just kind of throwing ideas out there until 1 in the morning. I had Lee and then Sophie.
Just for when we're doing appointments and all that fun stuff, I just ask that when we're doing it, we say how often each committee has met in the past semester. That way, for new councillors like myself, we are able to gauge if it's beneficial for us, if we're able to join due to time commitments, all that other fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So every executive will do a little spiel about their committee, what it does, and make sure to add in how often it meets. Sophie?
Yeah, another thing to keep in mind, old councillors have heard me say this many times before, when doing appointments is gender parity. That means that we want to try and have like equal voices from different communities on committees, and thank you for speaking during my speaking turn, those of you who did.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the great thing is that there's a lot of new councillors and there's a lot of committees with seats open. So let's get this started. So 6A is Appointments Committee, and that is chaired by, oh, sorry, David, yes?
Yeah, can I request an official excusal? I have class now.
Yes, you may. Okay, so, right, the other thing I forgot to explain, and I will write this all in the email, every councillor has 3 absences that are allowed before you get kicked off council. If you request an excusal, it means you don't use up one of your absences. So as David's doing right now, they're saying, I'd like to request an excusal so that we're not at like 1 absence out of the 3 that can get them kicked off. Is that a second?
Yeah, I was actually going to request an excusal as well.
Okay.
I couldn't, because the council was last minute, I couldn't cancel my plans for after. Mandatory.
All right, no problem. Okay, so we have a request for excusal from David and Arad. Is that to second?
I have the same reason, but in like 30 minutes.
Okay, and Sam as well. Jane? Second, there we go. Okay, so we'll omnibus past this. Is there any opposition to excusing the 3 councillors? All right, perfect. So in that case, that carries unanimously. You will not get your first absence. Thank you for bringing that up, David. And that being said, we can move straight into 6A, which is appointments, and this one is Lexi's committee chair.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Lexi. I'm the Loyola coordinator, and I'm also the chair of appointments. The appointments committee recommends appointees to any and all CSU and university bodies and or committees. Yeah. So we appoint, exactly like it says, we appoint everyone at the CSU who is an elected person, all representatives of the student body, and also on the university bodies, so on university committees and other internal bodies. So we've met, well, the thing about appointments is that you do it by appointments. So when we do have appointments, we'll meet at least once to look over CVs, and then we'll have a series of interviews and then another smaller meeting usually to make our decision. So you need to be fairly available. I try to accommodate as many people's schedule as possible for interviews, but realistically I can't get a time when all of us are in the room 3 or 4 different times during 1 week. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a really nice committee. I think you pick up a lot of really useful skills, and you also get to meet a lot of great people. And our committee's really great this year. We have a good student at large. So yeah, please nominate yourselves.
Thank you. And if I understand correctly, there's 1 seat open? All right, perfect. So the way we usually do appointments is I open the floor to nominations. So if you're nominating yourself, you need a second, and if you're nominating someone else, you need their consent, so that's implicitly a second. And then after we're done that, I give you all an opportunity to say why you should sit on the appointments committee to make an argument to your peers, and then after that, your peers can motivate for, hopefully not against you, and then we move to a vote. If there's one person that doesn't need to happen, we can just go straight to voting, but it's all up to council. So that being said, I will now open the floor to nominations for the appointments committee.
Just a question.
Yes.
For your councils, how many vacancies are there?
On appointments?
Yeah.
1. I just said that. And by the way, if the committees are not filled, they'll come back every council like a ghost until they are. Appointments committee. Going once.
Come on guys, don't be shy.
All right, so if there's no one who, there's some counselors who left as well, so they might want to sit on appointments committee. So if not, that will come back in February. And we can move on to the external and mobilization committee, and this is Kemi's committee. Is Kemi here? Oh, can anyone speak for them? Margot? Or if anyone's on the committee?
I'm on the committee.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So basically what we do is a lot of the time we approve or don't approve funding requests for external sort of mobilization or like social justice actions. It's really fun, and also it's really nice to actually see your involvement like pay off for people. Like you can be like, hey, we're going to like send $1,000 for like Indigenous solidarity, like, and then we do, and it's kind of awesome. We have been meeting more regularly lately, probably like once every 2 or 3 weeks, but it's very chill. We usually have snacks, and it's a nice environment.
Yeah, thank you. Did you say how often they meet? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, like once every 2 or 3 weeks.
Order please. I don't know what that is. Yes, Victoria?
Sorry, can we go through all of the seats that are available so we know what the options are depending on the availability times?
Oh, yeah, sure. So you mean you want to go through each one and say when they meet type thing?
Yeah, type of thing, and then depending on, that way we can just determine whether we have enough time to put into that, or?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Clubs and space, how often does it meet? This one is Princess. Is anyone on the committee who can confirm? Pull up my, yeah, John?
This Club and Space Committee, a lot of their workload's oriented towards summer and early fall, but they do meet intermittently. What that club committee is responsible for is ratifying the different clubs as they submit each year for ratification and then submitting their club's budgets. And then they also, throughout the year, they receive special clubs funding requests, and they review those and approve grants for those as they come in. So there's not like a set, they meet at this time every month. It's more like at this point in the year, it's basically as the special clubs funding requests come in, or as later club applications come in. Like most clubs apply earlier in the year, but occasionally new clubs will form mid-semester, and they have to form committee meetings. They can look over that. So you're probably looking at maybe 2 or 3 meetings in the semester, but that's just a guess. It's not my committee.
Thank you. While we have you here, Bingham?
Yeah, so according to the standing regulations, Finance Committee is responsible for overseeing the financial operation of the Student Union. In addition to its ability to adjust the budget, as in the CSU bylaws, it also works as the committee which monitors the expenditures and revenues of the Student Union. A review of the CSU financial policy should be performed by the Financial Committee at least once per fiscal year, which would be actually more than once this year. And at each member meeting of the committee, they should do a year-end report. So at the end of the year, the committee should present a year-end report regarding all disbursements made from the Special Project Fund. In practice, FinCom or FunCom meets once a month. We go over the budget actuals, The main powers of Finance Committee are to approve any just funding requests for items that are more than $10,000 and under $50,000. So anything under $10,000 can usually be done within the committee or whatever the discretionary fund is. And if it's more than $50,000, it has to come to council. So that's like the biggest power of Finance Committee, but they also look over the budget. Finance Committee has the sole power to modify budget lines between months. So if you want to say like less money for this line, more money for that line, that's where FinCom's the place to do it. Other things like if you want to make new financial policies, like stuff we've done this year has been around like a credit card policy. We had a policy around hardware allowances. So those are the kind of things we do, but mostly it's approving bigger ticket financial items, financial policy, and reviewing the budget.
Did you say how often it meets?
Minimum once a month, but if there's an occasion where a couple big spending items come up and we need to meet sooner than the monthly meeting, we might have a second one, but usually it's once per month.
Okay, thank you. Loyola, so we're just doing the about the committees first before appointing. Michelle?
I don't do Loyola.
Oh, sorry. My mistake.
Yeah, no,
I know that.
It's exactly what it sounds like. The Loyola Committee is responsible for advising the CSU on how best to serve students at Loyola. It will also make reports and recommendations to council regarding all CSU events, activities, and projects at Loyola. In addition, the committee is responsible for ensuring more food options and Loyola events. So that's essentially what we do. We look over also funding applications that come to the Loyola Committee for Loyola-related events. Pretty low, what's the word I'm looking for? Low meeting times. We meet roughly monthly. We don't get a ton of funding requests through it, but we get to talk a lot and have really good discussions about Loyola and about sort of solving the problems there. So it's a fun committee. We have good food. Yeah. Good people. So.
Thank you. Sustainability, Akira.
So the Sustainability Committee is basically in charge of assuring that policies that are being run from the CSU, or any policies that are being talked about in the university in terms of sustainability, kind of like encompasses the student standpoint of sustainability. We also look at the standing regulations and the positions of the CSU and try to make sure they're as sustainable as possible. The commitment is very low, like I would say once a month. There are 3 projects and actually a few policies that I'm planning to review this semester, so it'll most likely be once a month, possibly twice a month.
Okay, thank you. I see there's a couple placards. But I will just go through the committees first. Sure, Michaela.
So bursaries are now, it's new, that's why I'm curious, yeah. So that takes a little bit more time, but it's super exciting and important. You get to look through bursary applications and give 35 bursaries to students who need them.
So then I will change that, it will be twice a month.
All right, thank you. Student Life Committee, there we go, Michelle.
Yeah, hi. So the Student Life Committee, I will read you the standing regulation description and then tell you what actually happens. So the Events Committee is responsible to aid and help facilitate in the planning, preparation, and execution phases of events organized by the CSU. Members of this committee will be expected to help think up ideas for events, help with the planning process, and help run events. So in reality, I submit my work plan in September, so most of the events are planned. Whether you're on the committee or not, I'm still open to hearing them, but there's a budget and a plan and everything. But I do get feedback from the committee, and they give tips and advice on planning the events. Most importantly, what we do is special projects funding. So student groups and some community organizations will apply for up to $1,000 of funding. There's 3 rounds of that, so our next one is in March. And sometimes we get other applications directly to the committee for funding. So it's really cool because you get to see all the cool student life initiatives happening on campus and give them money. So it's great. The commitment is low enough. It's about once a month. If something comes up, there might be short meetings, but usually once a month, yeah.
Right. thank you. Silk Fund. Sophie, do you want to take this one?
Yep, so the Silk Fund oversees the Student Space Accessible Education and Legal Contingency Fund. It consists of the general coordinator, the general manager, one counselor, a professor, and a lawyer. That's the scope of the committee, so there's one seat open. We meet when things need to be approved from the Silk Fund. So, because nothing was approved this meeting, we won't be meeting soon until the next thing comes up. We also talk about the well-being of the fund, its like stability, and yeah, we are like the next oversight body after it gets approved by council. So, and not everything that gets sent to Silk Fund by council is always approved by the Silk Fund committee, because sometimes things fall under the really weird acronym that somehow spells silk, don't always. So yeah, you get to hang out with me sometimes.
It's Sal. But yes, no, I'm kidding. Okay. So CSU, oh yes, right, we have to approve all of the new folk. Well, while we're here, other things I forgot to say in the introductory remarks about the CSU. So also things to keep in mind is that when you're part of the CSU, you're sitting on a board of directors of a nonprofit. So yes, you are all students, but here you act in the capacity of directors of a board. So that means that you have legal obligations, fiduciary responsibility, things like that are always good to read up on, and I believe there'll be a training of some sort coming up. Yeah, all right, perfect. So there'll be a training on that. That being said as well, when you take decisions, you are taking decisions on behalf of the entire student body as you're using their tuition funds. So keep that in mind when you vote on things. Vote with that in mind, and don't take your responsibilities lightly. We meet once a month and twice in January and a bunch of other months. Yes, Sophie?
We're also a nonprofit, so sometimes what happens is people come in and they see it just as a business, but we're a nonprofit that's designed to serve and support students, which means things like profit margins aren't really what we're into here when we're looking at finances either.
Thank you very much. Oh, and that being said, speaking of the schedule, I will send it all out to you. James, did you have something?
I have a question about point I. Yeah, just explain what that means.
Oh, when there's new counselors, there just needs to be a motion to, I guess, ratify the vote that occurred.
Oh.
Within the board of directors. So, sorry, it was something procedural I forgot to put on the agenda.
Okay.
So it happens at the council-elect as well, or in the June meeting.
Oh, okay.
When you all were voted in, so it's a little procedural thing. CCSL.
Yes. Okay, so CCSL is not a CSU committee. It is a university council. So I will read you the little description. Operating on the principle that the university is a dynamic, evolving community, the Concordia Council on Student Life shall hear and act upon social and educational issues affecting student life through recommendations to appropriate university bodies. The council is the highest non-academic advisory committee in the university, making recommendations regarding quality of student life. In particular, the council shall study all aspects of student life for the purpose of enhancing relationships between students and the total educational environment, establish clear priorities for student life and services in the university, initiate necessary research and establish the necessary committees for its proper functioning, receive and consider items dealing with the quality of student life from university members or group, develop and evaluate the student services budget and recommend it to the Board of Governors. Not in here, there's also a special projects funding for CCSL. They have like way more money than the CSU one, so there's like really cool big project applications. It's a really great body to sit on. There's a lot of really engaged administrators, and it's also a parity committee. So like Senate and Board of Governors, we sit and we have like virtually no say because there's so few of us. On CCSL, it's half administrators and staff and things, and half students. So it's really nice because you have an impact on things happening in the university.
And how often does it meet?
It meets once a month. If you join, there's a special projects funding subcommittee, and they also give away certain awards for student life, so there's a subcommittee for that, and those meet a couple of times a year.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone through all the committees. Oh, sorry, Jane, you had your placard up at one point.
Yes. So it's just, I guess, a point of information for the chairs of those committees. And so there is a gender parity thing that we have in place, which is fantastic. But I was wondering if the chairs could talk a bit about the parity of the faculty's members of their committees. That way we can find out if certain committees have so-and-so members from which faculties. That way we can try and get equal representations on these committees if everyone is into that.
I don't know if it would make things more efficient, but I can just yell out who's on the committees when we go through each one. Would that be okay? Or we could go through all the chairs individually. Okay, I'll just yell it out. All right, so we're at external and mobilization, and on this committee already are James, Margot, and Marlene. So that's ENCS, Arts and Science, and Peter resigned. So we have one.
There's also student at-larges though.
Oh, sorry, yes, student. Oh, okay, in that case you have to do it. Yeah, we don't know. So Kemi's not here, unfortunately, but if anyone would like to put their name forward for the External and Mobilization Committee, I'm sure Kemi would be thrilled to have the committee filled.
Help us reach quorum.
Yes, Victoria? Sure. Okay, so do we have a second for Victoria's nomination? Rowan? All right, is there anyone else who'd like to put their name forward? All right, if not, Victoria, tell us why you'd like to sit on the committee. You can, or like it's not obligatory, it's just...
Well, no one seemed to want it, so I'll do anything that anybody doesn't want. I love working, I love putting my heart, I'm a what's those things that like change? Chameleon, there you go. So anything you put me in, I'll enjoy and I'll make sure to get the best of it, so.
All right, perfect. James?
I motion to appoint Victoria to the committee.
Okay, seconded by Caleb. Is there any opposition to appointing Victoria? All right, perfect. Congratulations to Victoria. You're on the External and Mobilization Committee, and I will let Kemi know.
Point to, I
Yes?
don't know what, privilege or whatever. If there's only one person nominating himself, given that it's 8:43, can we just proceed to the vote and not do like the reason why they want to be on the committee?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, we can. It's just like so people don't feel like I unfairly passed over them when they wanted to say something about themselves. But if everyone's okay with it, yeah, I can pass over that part. All right. So now we are on Finance Committee. So there are 2 seats open. Would anyone like to put their name forth for Finance? Yes, Sam? Do we have a second? Margot? And Eduardo? Do we have a second? Sophie? Okay. So 2 people for 2 seats. Is there anyone else? Jane? Yeah? Oh. Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, the current members are Margot and Zoe Zijuni, so they're both aspect counselors.
All right. Sam was seconded by Margot, I believe. Yeah. Okay. So 2 counselors for 2 seats. Is there anyone else who wants to nominate themselves? All right. So I just need a motion. Rowan, seconded by Jane. Is there any opposition to appointing Sam and Eduardo to the Finance Committee? Perfect. So congratulations. You are now on the Finance Committee. And John will likely reach out to you soon. Loyola Committee, 2 seats. Would anyone like to put their name forth for the Loyola Committee?
It's the ghost that haunts council, come on.
How dare you?
Yeah, we skipped Club and Space. Oh, sorry, we skipped Clubs and Space. Okay, we'll go back to Clubs and Space in a second. Loyola Committee, is there anyone who'd like to put their name forth? Okay, so if not, that will come back next week. So we're on Clubs and Space Committee, my mistake. Who would like to put their name forward for Clubs and Space Committee? Yes, Patrick. Do we have a second? Sophie? Is there anyone else who'd like to put their name forward? Rowan? Yeah?
I don't think the restriction was actually mentioned. You're not allowed to sit on this committee.
Yes.
If you're the executive of a CSU club. Just so people.
Okay, and the
Just want to
people,
make sure everyone.
the people on the committee are David, who's ENCS, Hilal, who's Arts and Science, correct me if I'm wrong, and Zoe, who's Arts and Science. So if there's, is that a placard up? No. Okay, so if there's no one further, I just need a motion to appoint Rowan and a second, Eduardo. Is there any opposition to appointing Patrick to Clubs in Space? Perfect. Congratulations, Patrick. You are now on the Clubs in Space Committee. So that leaves us at Sustainability Committee with 1 seat open. Would anyone, yes, Danielle. Do we have a second? Sophie? Is there anyone else who'd like to put their name forth for the Sustainability? Yes, Eliza? Sorry? Oh, excuse me, in the corner. Eliza? Do we have a second? Jane? All right, so we have Eliza and Jane for 1 seat on Sustainability. Is there anyone else who'd like to put their name forward?
Eliza and Danielle.
Eliza and Danielle, my mistake. That is what is written here. All right, is there anyone else? Okay, so if not, we'll move into standard protocol. Danielle, why would you like to sit on the Sustainability Committee?
So I have a lot of project experience in Concordia. Like I've worked with the Formula E team, I've worked with DISC, and I'm the project manager of DISC right now. So I have a lot of project experience, and this is very much making sure the projects and everything, the policies get sustainable through Concordia, and I think I do that so on a daily basis. So I have a lot of experience in that. So I think I could be a good help. So yeah.
Thank you. And Eliza? There are other committees. Would you like to rescind, or would?
I guess I'm passionate about our relationship to the environment, and I volunteered at the People's Potato multiple times, at different sustainability organizations around Montreal, and yeah, I'm dedicated, willing to commit my time and energy to the effort. I think it's very important and pressing, so there we go.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll just leave the floor open a couple minutes so that people can motivate for their peers. Once again, this sometimes ends up going around and around and around, so we'll give it like a couple of minutes if anyone would just like to motivate for either Danielle or Eliza. If not, we can move to a vote. Okay, so since there's 2 people for 1 seat, I will hand out the tiny papers. And thank you. You just have to write your choice. And then Elizabeth and I will count them. Just a reminder to maintain decorum. We are still in session, and also we are in the middle of a vote.
Crap, what do I do with my
Oh, you just write the name.
I know, but
Okay. So I should have explained that better.
do I flip a coin?
No, that's so There you go. I think it's good. Thank you. Oh, you can either vote for someone or abstain as well. I forgot to mention that.
That's an extra.
Oh.
You look tired. Thanks, that's the nicest thing to say to a lady ever.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I love that they didn't misspell my name, but they misspelled your name. I deserve it, so nice. Oh, you took mine? I mean, youth parliament misspelled my name. Yeah.
Where did the list go? Oh, there you are. Yeah, we'll just go outside and count them, and then come back. Sorry, do you have everyone? Yep, yeah, you. Everyone gave me their vote? Going once? Oh, page. Thank you. Alright everyone, remember that time I said council's still in session when we're voting? No. Okay, so I'd like to congratulate Danielle. You are on the Sustainability Committee. Right, I forgot to mention as well, somebody always asks to reveal the vote count. We do not for the secret ballot votes, that's why it is secret. So we have the sustainability committee, and we're now on. All right, everyone, remember that time I said council's still in session when we're voting? If anyone would like to nominate themselves to student life. So I'd like to congratulate Danielle, you are on the sustainability committee. Right, I forgot to mention as well, somebody always asks to reveal the vote count. We do not for the secret ballot votes, that's why it's secret. So we have filled the sustainability committee, and we're now on to student life committee, so there is one seat open. If anyone would like to nominate themselves to student life.
Come on, guys.
You had to hang out with Michelle.
Thank you. You don't need to tell
There
me.
anyone who'd like to
Sell it, Caitlin.
Yes, Rowan?
Having sat on student life before, I know I learned a lot because you're approving funding applications. So sitting on the other side of funding applications
Yes,
teaches you
so
what to look
appointments
for
at Loyola,
when you
no one
yourself are
put their
submitting
name
funding
forward,
applications.
so we
So it's actually quite useful
them.
skill.
After
And, like, the
student
little
life, there's no
details
more
that you
standing committees, so there's the Silk Fund
Just
committee,
a note.
and then CCSL as well. Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to put their name forth? If not, it'll come back in February. Yep. Do you want to put your name forth for student life?
Positions available.
Okay, so we have a second, so appointments at Loyola, no one put their name right forth. Is there anyone else for student life? After student life, Okay, there's so I just no need a more motion to standing appoint committees, Eliza so or there's James the Silk to Fund appoint? committee. To appoint, and okay, CCSL seconded by as well. Jane. Is there any opposition to appointing Eliza to student life?
Or we did that, sorry.
We did that, perfect. Yes. Congratulations, Eliza, you are on student life. Do you want to put your name forth for student life? Counselors are
Yeah,
page
sure.
of so we have a second, Samantha of Arts and Science, Jared, Sophie of, all right, is there anyone else for student life? Okay, so I just need a motion to appoint Eliza, or James, was that to appoint? Okay, seconded by James, so that being said, is there any opposition to appointing Eliza to student life? Yes, John? Perfect. Congratulations, Eliza, you are on student life. I forgot to mention the current counselors are Paige of Arts and Science, Samantha of Arts and Science, and Sophie of Arts and Science. And Danielle. Is there anyone else who would like to nominate themselves to Silk of Fine Arts? Alright, so that being said, I just need a motion to appoint James. Silk Fund. Okay, yes, second. Marlene, all those,
Council, we're supposed to do
or
it
no,
at
sorry,
least
is
one
there any
committee, so if
opposition
you're
to
not on one,
appointing James
I really
to the
encourage you
Silk
to
Fund?
self-nominate.
Alright, so if not, that carries unanimously. Congratulations, we have a second. You are now a member of the CSU Silk Fund Committee. Is there anyone else who would like to Okay, so at this point we're on 6I, which is Concordia Student Union. So we need a motion from the floor to ratify the vote of the membership to appoint Marlene. All those, or no, sorry, is there any opposition to appointing Jane to the Silk Fund? Alright, so if not, that carries unanimously. Congratulations. You are now a member of the CSU Silk Fund Committee. Okay, so at this point we're on 6I, which is Concordia Student Union. So we need a motion from the floor to ratify the vote of the membership. So if for some reason this happens every year, people resign between 6, 7, 8 new counselors. I think I counted that correctly.
All right, well, in that case, I motion to ratify.
Okay, do you have a second? Caleb, is there any opposition to ratifying the appointment of the new counselors to CSU?
Empty.
Alright, so congratulations,
nothing to do
new
about that?
counselors, you are
Unfortunately, they have to resign before
Yes,
the
Jake.
election even
Oh, okay.
starts. So if for some reason this happens every year, people resign between this time and that time, and yeah.
Okay. All right, well, in that
Jake,
case,
sorry,
I
yes.
motion to ratify.
Yes, did we
Okay,
go over that one, or?
No, that was next.
Okay.
Is there any opposition to ratifying the appointment of the new counselors to CSU? I'm not sure if everyone is currently in the CSU counselor Facebook group, but when the agenda gets modified, it gets added to the Facebook group, and then you can go and download it there and see the amendments. I will try to find you all on Facebook, or you can find me or Sophie, and you'll end up being added.
sorry, yes.
So CCSL, how many?
No, that was next.
Just one.
Okay, and currently, I'm not sure if everyone is currently in the CSU counselor Facebook group, but when the agenda gets modified, it gets added to our Facebook group, and then you can go and download it there. So that leaves, I will try to find you all on Facebook, or you would like to nominate Sophie, and you'll end up being added. Yes, so CCSL, how many seats are there?
Just one because David was
Aaron,
Okay,
counselors,
and currently
should it would be
Paige
good to have
of
a
Arts and
good
Science
dynamic
and
of
David
counselors
of
on this committee, not just all arts
Nope.
and science.
Jack
Arts and
of
science
Arts
people
and
love
Science
committees,
and Paige
it's
of
our
Arts and
thing,
Science are on
but
this.
let's
So that leaves
mix it up.
one seat open. If you would like to nominate
I would just like to
yourself or
mention that
someone else.
CCSL meetings are,
Yes,
so some of the subcommittees are different, but those are very rare, but the monthly meetings are always on a Friday, usually from 10 to 12.
Counselors.
Sometimes from 10 to 1:30
It would be good to have a good dynamic.
Thank you.
But sometimes they're short, and the food is great.
Thank you. Eduardo?
Committees, everything, but,
We have a second. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to nominate yourself?
I would just like to mention that CCSL meetings
Okay, if not, I just need a motion to appoint Jane and a second.
But the monthly
Rowan,
meetings are always
is there any
on Friday.
opposition to appointing Eduardo to CCSL?
Sometimes from 10 to 1:30
All right,
if
perfect.
it's long.
Congratulations, you are now on CCSL. Wow, we
But sometimes they're short, and the food is great.
Thank you. Eduardo, seconded by Rowan. Yes. Okay. All right. We're done appointments. Point 6 and appointments committee and Loyola will come back in February. If not, I just need a motion to appoint Jane and a second. Rowan, is there any opposition to appointing Eduardo to CCSL?
Loyola, you said.
All right,
it was
perfect.
every month?
Congratulations, you are now on CCSL. Wow, we rolled through those.
Given that it's
Sure, why not? All right, order please. All right, we're done appointments, point 6, and appointments committee, and Loyola will come back
does anyone
in
else want to
February
appoint
meeting if
themselves
anyone
to
would like to
Loyola?
appoint themselves. Yes, Victoria?
Okay, if not, I just need a
you make
motion to appoint Victoria.
Yeah,
Eduardo,
and Loyola, you
Caleb,
said
is there any
it was every
opposition
month
to
or
appointing Victoria to the Loyola committee?
Can I point to that one as well?
Yeah.
Given that it's apparently goes.
Sure, why not? All right, order please. Order. Yes, Rowan? Second. Okay, does anyone else want to appoint themselves to Loyola? Okay, if not, I just need a motion to appoint Victoria.
Okay, is there a
Eduardo,
second?
seconded by Caleb. Is there any opposition to appointing Victoria to the Loyola committee?
Okay, so I just need
All
a
right,
motion
perfect.
to
So
appoint Jane.
it will still come back as there is one seat still open.
Is there
Yes,
any
Jane.
opposition to appointing Jane to the appointments committee?
also,
Perfect. Congratulations, you're now on the appointments
Sure.
committee.
For appointments
And that
committee?
means that one Loyola
We're doing
seat
this a
will
little
come
backwards,
back.
but that is good. I like appointments. Okay, is there a
So that
second?
being said, we are on
Page.
point 7. If
Does anyone else want to nominate themselves for appointments committee? Okay, so I just need a motion to appoint Jane, Marlene, seconded Margot. Is there any opposition to appointing Jane to the appointments committee? Perfect. Congratulations, you're now on the appointments committee. And that means that one Loyola seat will come back next week, next month, sorry, not next week. Okay,
Alright,
so
so
that being
we're
said,
on
we are
7,
on
and we have
point
the
7. If there's no
presentation
further
of
questions or
the,
comments about
elections chief
appointments.
electoral officer, and if I
Going
understand
once.
correctly, they are
Yes.
Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. So yeah, the floor is yours. You can stand up, sit down. Yep.
PowerPoint, whatever is still on, if you can for some reason. Turn that
There's
off.
a mover in a second still. All right, so we are on 7, and we have the presentation of the elections
just
chief
give
electoral
Sophie a
officer. And if I
second to
understand
set
correctly,
things
they're here.
Okay, everyone, I understand that there's a lot of people in the room.
Didn't see you there. So yeah, the floor is yours. You can stand up, sit down.
Personal privilege?
Yep.
That means the PowerPoint, whatever is still on, if we can find some way. Turn that off.
Use the means of projection.
Order please, do you need the projector by the way? Okay. So we'll just give Sophie a second to set things up. Okay everyone, I understand that there's a lot of people in the room, but just need to keep this rolling.
99 votes. And regarding
Alright, the floor is yours, Mohammed.
stations, so or the laptops, I think so we need them from you guys during the so I can answer them. Maybe so, like the upcoming election. The first time we're doing the online station elections is this time. No more by simple voting. And we had around 1,600 99 votes. 250 people voted. And regarding the stations or the laptops, I don't think so. We need them during the next elections. Maybe the upcoming election, we will still need the stations, but it will be no more laptops because we had only 100 as I go. No, about 250 people voted from the laptops.
My question
You
is
guys have any
about
more
visibility of
questions, so I can
elections.
answer.
So first of all, congratulations, like taking on an election this disastrous. You did a pretty good job, so thank you very much.
Do you want to do them at the end?
Now, on
or
top
do
of
you
what we
want
could do
them
better for next election,
As I go.
I think an
Okay, yeah.
issue that I've seen ever since I started at Concordia 4 years ago is that our elections are not very visible. When I walk into the hall building, I see that we have these CSU banners. There's a Reggie's one, there's I think one advertising infant services, legal information clinic, taking on an election, advocacy center, I'm sure there's a third.
So thank you very much.
Hojo, I think. I was thinking maybe we could have a banner there. I heard from the Dean of Students that it's possible to get a Metro banner. So potentially in the general election, I would really advise looking into ways to make the election visible, resources that we haven't considered using that are at our disposal. Speaking with the Dean of Students who has access to this information. I'm sure there's a third. Because I really, and also last election, a general election, it was something that was well done. All the bulletin boards were plastered with election posters and that really brought a lot of visibility to the election. So just, I think if there's one thing that could be improved next election, it's the visibility. And if you want to speak on it, if you had any ideas, this is your opportunity. Speaking with the Dean of Students who has access to this information. Because I really, and also last election, a general election, it was something that was well done.
We only have the CSU
with election posters
Concordia on
and that really
Facebook.
brought a lot of visibility
David
to
is
the
doing
election.
a good job. Like
So just,
posting
I think if there's
for
one thing that
any,
could be improved next election, it's the
nomination
visibility.
period or
And if
any
you want to speak
about
on it, if
the
you had any ideas,
polling
this is your
periods.
opportunity.
But other than that, we don't have any marketing. The marketing is like I would say an issue. Since we have an online voting, as he said, we need like more visibility. That's what like I did on the polling stations. I made sure that clerks have T-shirts and we have things that explains the council and what you guys do. Because people don't know what CSU is. And they have a lot of questions about what CSU is. Since we have an online voting,
Also,
as he can,
I don't know
as he
if
said,
it's
we need, like,
allowed
more
within the
visibility.
standing regulations, but would it be possible for you to hire your own marketing assistant? Because I know you could hire DEOs, potentially have a DEO whose responsibility for marketing. Do you think that's a possibility or something you'd be
People
interested
don't
in?
know what CSU is. And they have a lot of questions. What CSU is. Professional guy to do that. Marketing is not easy.
I don't know if it's allowed within the standing
I think I
regulations.
can clarify the standing
but
regs
would it
part
be
of that.
possible
It
for
does
you
say that the
hire
chief
your
electoral
own
officer has
marketing
access to all the
assistant? Because I
CSU's
know you can hire,
resources.
DEOs.
I believe that's how it's
Potentially
written.
have a DEO who's responsibility
In
for marketing.
which would include
Do you
their
think that's a
graphic design
possibility
team
or something you'd
and
be
all that.
interested in?
So I don't know if that helps answer your question in any way. I'm going off of memory.
Professional guy to do that. Marketing is not. While I was doing the testing for the online voting, I had some feedback from the executive and CSU team that we need to list yes, no, and abstain for
which would
each
include their graphic design team
candidate,
and all that.
which
I don't know
it
if
was
that helps
impossible
answer
to
your
do it
question
through the online
I'm going
voting.
off of memory.
I was in contact with the company several times, but it was like impossible. What we can do, listing abstain and none of the above below the candidate. So if there is like 3 seats, that we need to list yes, no, and abstain for each candidate, which it was impossible. So if we have like 3 seats available, I was in contact with the company, select one candidate, but it was like by selecting none of the above, it will go directly to no for each candidate. It will be fairly distributed between all of them. So if there is like 3 seats, that's an idea.
Sophie had a question.
Oh.
Yeah, because in our bylaws it states that no one can be
So if we have like
elected
3
by
seats
acclamation,
available,
which is when
they
you're
can,
elected just by virtue of no one
select one
running against you.
candidate.
So in a case where there
by
are
selecting none of the above, it would go directly to
there's
no,
one
no
seat
for
open and
each
only one
candidate.
person
It
runs,
would
the
be
reason we
fairly
need yes, no, and
distributed
abstain
between
is so that like the person doesn't win just because they're the only one
all. That's
winning,
an idea.
the only one running. And I think also with the like not being able to do it per candidate, even if you were able to say no to everyone, sometimes that's also not an option. You might want to vote yes for 2 of the 3 candidates. There's one seat open, but just not the third, or only for one candidate. And I think not having the ability to do that, especially when it's something in our bylaws that you can't be elected acclamation, like that's it's a really big problem that also needs to be addressed not being able to do it per candidate.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've got a bit of a speakers list, sorry, because I see placards going up everywhere. James, you had a question too?
Yes, for 2 of the 3
Yeah.
candidates. but just
It
not
was
the
more
third.
kind of yeah,
or
so
only for
I
one
was kind of
candidate,
to
and,
ask
like,
where
not
the
having
yes,
the
no,
ability
abstain
to
was
do
coming
that,
from. And you
especially when it's
explained
something in
that,
our
so it's
bylaws
moot
that you
point
can't
that
be
you
elected
took my time.
That's a really big problem that.
Oh yeah, I was actually going to just comment that I thought the CEO did actually a really great job
Thank you.
on
Yeah, so I've got a bit
marketing.
of a speakers list, sorry.
And it wasn't disastrous. I like to separate them because
James, you had a question too?
Mohammed was not responsible for the election that happened in November. And he started from scratch, and I think I'd really like to commend your work for that. I thought that the appearance around the polling booths was actually quite significantly improved from past years. Actually, every year I've seen the CSU. I really think it's more of a systemic issue of students not knowing about the CSU or how important it is to vote and what even happens. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I thought that you added important details to the marketing that I think really helped and made it look also more official because I think it's important to look professional. Yeah, actually every year I've seen
During the next sections. The more visible, the more votes, the more people know what CSU is.
Yeah, we have to keep going. I'm not saying that we shouldn't keep going, we have a lot to improve on, but I think the CEO did a lot within a short amount of time, he did a good job. I thought that you added important details to the marketing that.
Yeah, I'm rising on a point of privilege right now. I would just point out that the CEO is required to do a written report to council following election, so this is something that will come back in greater detail to council. So if there's immediate questions for Mohammed, maybe ask them now, but keep in mind that this will be coming back to council, so we have other agenda items, maybe we can keep it brief tonight. Because you will get the chance to ask all your questions and put forward your ideas.
Yeah, it'll come back at the
Yeah, I'm rising on
AGM
a point of
actually.
privilege right now. I would just point out that the CEO is required to do a written, it'll be next council meeting, the written report of the CEO, not just like a AM here. So, if there's immediate questions for Mohammed, maybe ask them now, but keep in mind that this will be coming back to council.
You said to hire a professional marketing team, but you have JMSB next door, like why haven't you tried using any of them? Like, I'm a marketing major, for example, but there's a lot of marketing majors obviously there. I mean, I don't think we're fully professional, but I think we have enough knowledge. Have you tried communicating with anybody there?
Maybe next council meeting, the written report of the CEO, not just like a AM.
And there was a holiday from the 21st until the 6th. So I
It's
have
more like, are you allowed to? Professional marketing team.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed or not,
Tried
but
using any of them?
so far
Like, I'm a
maybe
marketing major, for
we have.
example, but there's a lot of marketing majors obviously there. I mean, I don't think we're fully professional, but I think
for the job is
there's
not
enough knowledge. Have you
like
tried
it's up at the
communicating with
discretion of the
anybody
person who's for a CEO. It's like at the discretion of the CEO, except for there are certain jobs in the bylaws that are enumerated who can and cannot hold them. And yeah, like it's that would be fine, but it's not. Also, like we do utilize our very talented student base for a lot of different positions, so I wouldn't want people to come away from this thinking that like the CSU just exists and doesn't hire students who are qualified and capable of doing jobs. We have a lot of positions that are just for undergraduate students, so like in general, it's allowed and it happens. Yeah, like it's that would be fine, but it's not.
There's two of you. Patrick L.
Utilize our very
But a quick solution to the issue that you brought up with the company
the CSU just
can
exists and
be
doesn't hire
achieved
students who are
through
qualified
having extra more candidates than there are
have a
and
lot of
simply having
positions
them
that are
named
just for
no.
undergraduate students,
So
like,
the company saying that
it's
there is
allowed
no
and
solution to
it
this
happens.
is easily fixed. So you literally just contact them and say, have more no options. So I know it was no time, but I'm saying like I thought this was like, to be done in the future. Like, so it can be achieved through having more candidates than there are, and simply having them named no. Okay.
They said they haven't
So
done it before.
the company saying that
That's why
there is
they're
no
gonna, like,
solution to
change the
this
whole
is
system for
easily
the
fixed. So
online
you
voting.
literally just contact them and say, have more no options.
Because when I tried to do it
I know
like
it
yes,
was
no
no time,
abstain
but I'm saying
for
like
each
I thought
candidate,
this was like
and
to be done in
it
the future,
appears
right?
that
So
every elector can do yes, no for everyone. Just yes, no, abstain for each one. You can't just say yes, no for. They say specific candidates. And sometimes you have like 2 seats open, 5 candidates. We just need the elector to be able to elect just 2 candidates, not more than. Do it like yes, no, abstain for each candidate.
Wait, am I allowed to propose a motion or?
Every elector can
So,
do yes, no for everyone. Just yes,
I
no,
have a
abstain
whole
for each
motion
one.
already
You can
up.
just
So
say yes,
whereas
no
next,
for
Oh, I'll send it to you.
specific candidates.
So,
And sometimes
whereas
we might
96% of
put
votes
out
cast in the
5
Concordia
candidates.
Student Union by-elections support the implementation of online voting, whereas a turnout of 2,699 voters netted an increase of 90% from the CSU general elections of 2018. Whereas the CSU has a one-year subscription plan with the online voting company Simply Voting, by my recollection. Be it resolved that the CSU use online voting for all future elections, notwithstanding the relevant regulations. Be it further resolved that the CSU use the Simply Voting platform to conduct the 2019 general elections. And be it further resolved that the CSU Policy Committee propose changes to electoral regulations to reflect this changing reality for the 2019 general elections by February 30th. Be it resolved that the CSU use online voting for all future elections, notwithstanding the relevant regulations.
Point at hand, so it
Be it
is,
further resolved
which
that
is
the
electoral
CSU use the
officer
Simply Voting
point,
platform
well, I think it's
to
called
conduct the
elections,
2019
chief electoral
general
officer.
elections.
So
And
yeah,
be it
do
further
we have a
resolved
second?
that the CSU Policy
James,
Committee
do you wanna
propose
motivate
changes
Patrick?
to electoral regulations to reflect this changing reality for the 2019 general election. I think we should be respecting the wishes of, I guess, what, there's 96% of Concordians who voted for online voting, so I think that we should be putting in work for the general elections now.
Well, I think it's called elections, chief electoral officer. So yeah, do we have a second?
Could I
James,
amend
do you
this
wanna
to have
motivate
the
Patrick?
committee that's been tasked with researching online voting be the ones
Also,
to like look
I
into
think
the
we should
policy
be respecting
recommendations,
the
because policy
wishes
has a
of,
lot on their plate right now.
I guess.
Can you frame it as a?
So I motion to amend to
Concordians who
submit
voted for online
elections and
voting, so,
participation committee to
I think that we should be
submit
putting in
policy
work.
proposals on the implementation of online voting rather than policy committee.
Alright, okay, so you're changing policy committee to elections and participation?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a second for the amendment? James, do you wanna motivate?
Yeah, policy committee has a ton on their plate, so I motion to amend like petitions for referendum questions to overviews of the standing regulations that have been changed, to there'll be 2 new policies that are submitted to policy committee like this month. And they consistently are one of the most like overworked and
So do we have a second for the amendment?
like,
James, do you wanna motivate?
burdened committees, so having a committee that was literally created to look into the implementation of elections and participation, I think that why do we have that ad hoc at all if it's not going to do the work for it?
Okay, thank you. Can the amendment be considered friendly, or is there any opposition to it?
And they
Okay,
consistently
perfect.
are
So in that case,
overworked
policy
and
committee will be changed to elections and participation
burdened
committee.
committees,
Just on
so
a
having
Robert's
committee
rules
that
note,
was literally
so when you
created
make an amendment to a
look at the
motion,
implementation of elections and
it requires a
participation,
second and then a new
I
speakers
think
list
that
starts. So some
why do
people
we have
always
that
ask me,
ad hoc
why
at
am I
all?
not on the speakers list again? Because we started a new amendment. You can
Can the
amend a
amendment be
motion,
considered
or you
friendly,
can
or is there any
amend
opposition
a
to it?
motion, and then you can amend the amendment, but you cannot go
Perfect.
further than
So in
that
that
down
case,
the amendment
policy
rabbit hole.
committee will be
Thankfully,
changed
this did not
to,
require that.
elections
So we're back
and
on the main speakers list, which is
participation.
Jane, just on a
Rowan,
Robert's
and
rules
James.
note. So when you make an amendment to a motion, it requires a second and then a new speakers list starts. So some people always ask me, why am I not on the speakers list again? Because we
May
started a new
RCM,
amendment. You can
and then
amend
be
a
further
motion,
resolved
or
that
you
the
can amend
May
a
RCM,
motion, and then you can amend the amendment, but
council
you cannot
vote
go
on
further than that
implementing
down the
online
amendment
voting
rabbit hole.
after receiving the
Thankfully,
CEO
this did not
a
require
report.
that.
That
So
would
we're back
have more
on the
information,
speakers
a
list, which
really
is
detailed
Jane,
one about how it
Rowan,
worked,
and James.
how it went, and keeping in mind that the students have voted on this, we can consider that as well. But it's just that we have the entire picture before we vote on this.
Would you be able to formulate, just so I completely understand your amendment, you are just moving, are you moving to amend with a completely new be it resolved, or to change something in the motion?
Something in the motion and adding another be it further resolved.
Okay, so you're moving to amend, would you just be able to to read where exactly?
Sure, would you mind reading the first part of your motion, Patrick?
Yes. It is, or, it just showed up, yeah.
So, what, first be it resolved?
Okay, actually, just the motion and adding another be it further resolved. Right, so the first be it resolved, so amended to read that be it resolved that the CSU use online voting until the May RCM, notwithstanding the relevant regulations, and then adding another be it further resolved that the CSU revisit implementing online voting on a permanent basis after receiving the CEO report. Right, so the first be it resolved, so amended to read that be it resolved that the CSU use online voting until the May RCM,
Okay, let me
notwithstanding
just add
the
that
relevant
in
regulations,
so that
and then adding another, be it further
we all
resolved
know what
that.
we're voting on. Sorry, my computer just froze.
That the CSU revisit implementing online voting on a permanent basis after
There we go.
receiving the seal.
Nope.
Okay, so notwithstanding so be it resolved the CSU use online voting for all future elections, notwithstanding the relevant regulations, and then you had added something about May 31st, I think?
Yeah, changing for all future elections to until.
Oh, until, there we go.
Until the May RCM implementation.
19, and then the addition, there we go. Okay, so, and then the addition at the end, so notwithstanding
Be it further resolved.
okay,
There
so
should
be it
be
resolved
on
the
there,
CSU use
but-
online voting.
Okay.
Do we have a second for the
Election
notwithstanding the relevant
Marco?
regulations, then you had added something
kind
about
of
May
already
31st,
motivated,
so I'll leave that there. Is there any opposition to the changes to the motion? Okay, so we'll start a new speakers list and begin debate. Patrick?
I,
18, and
like,
then
while
the addition.
I get my fellow
Okay,
counselor
so,
Jane's
and then the
sentiments
addition
that we
at
need to be prudent
end
about
of the
this,
motion of be it
we also
further
need to
resolved. There should be
respect the
an
fact that
Okay, do we have a
96%
second
of
for the
people voted
amendment?
for this, and we had a 90%
Marco?
increase in
You kind of already
like, in
motivated,
participation.
so I'll leave that
And,
there. Is there any
um,
opposition to the changes to
Also,
the motion? Okay, so we'll
I
start a new
do want to
speakers list
just point
and
out
begin
that
debate. Patrick?
there are multiple universities, probably around between 40 and 50 universities in Canada who use online voting, and I think this is really just about respecting what the people want, so I don't think we should be stopping this, so, yeah. Also, I do want to just point out that there are
Worded, do you support the use of online voting in CSU elections? It was not a binding implementation question, so this motion is important because it follows that implementation.
And I think this is really
That's,
just about
I'm saying that
respecting
not because I don't think
what
we
people want, so I
shouldn't
don't think we
do
should
the
be,
democratic will of the students. I'm saying that because
stop
there is
this,
also a
so,
question of legality and security that comes with this that we unearthed while implementing online voting for the by-elections, which is we technically need students like consent to have access to their student numbers to ensure that the elections are as secure as they are. So there's an aspect of if we want to make sure that online voting is implemented in a super secure way, we might have to do another referendum to ask for students' individual consent to implement the system, which the RCM in May would give us time to look into that and to sort of like submit a further referendum, which I know by the looks on some people's faces sounds like bureaucratic nonsense, but it could really legally cover our butts as an organization. And I think that's important to put on the table because these are things that have come up and we're concerned that weren't addressed. And simply the sheer number of universities that use online voting isn't giving me constructive or productive methods of implementing it. It's great, but I need to know something concrete as to how to do it in the best way possible and best practice so that we don't end up with a nasty situation on our hands. And I think that's legally put on the table because these are things that have come up and we're concerned that weren't addressed.
No matter what happens with this, we have already paid for a one-year subscription to Simply Voting, so technically we have, we can run elections as many as we want with Simply Voting until the end of the year, so we can do the upcoming general elections in March and the fall by-elections will be covered by money already spent, so there's that. The other piece is just a request, like if you're going to submit detailed motions to council, please send them to councillors in advance so they can review the materials and prepare. It's a courtesy we give each other, so Simply Voting, just please asking everyone to do that. We have
so kind of talks about second referendums kind of very much hurt me because it's the same thing that like I know people have been following different parts of the world where governing bodies keep asking people for referendums until they get the right result. Marks. Kind of now this isn't to try to cast aspersions too much on anyone, it's just that I don't think we kind of had the will of the people, and the will of the people is spoken very overwhelmingly in support of online voting. And we have time to look into standing regulation changes until until May, and even maybe after that, we're constantly going to be changing these regulations anyway. This is what the policy committee is looking into, and if this might come up as an issue, we can deal with it when it does. So, worst case scenario, if this really becomes a problem, a future council can change the standing regulations again. Like, I don't think this is necessarily if it becomes such a big thorn in anybody's issue, but other than that, I think we should probably go forward with implementing the online system, because, I mean, you know, Winston Churchill, you know, except for all the other systems, democracy is the best, right? Oh, sorry, no, it's the worst system except for all the others that have been tried again. So, this is kind of the conception of popular sovereignty in governing an organization. It's the worst system you can have, except for all the other systems that you can have, right? It has its flaws, but it's the best we have. So, I think we should probably go with the popular consensus of 96% of the electorate, or 95.9% of the electorate. Oh, sorry, no, it's the worst system except for
all right, so I personally do think to drag this out any more than it already has been would be bureaucratic nonsense. I think the people of Concordia have clearly spoken. If you look at election statistics, and I'll start with myself, 242 people voted me in. 523 people voted in the general coordinator. 2,437 voted for online voting. So online voting is obviously far more legitimate than anyone in this room. To drag it out any longer makes absolutely no sense. The people want this more than they want us. I don't even want me. But seriously, and on Jane's point, I really appreciate prudence. But I do think, like, let's say we get the CEO report and there's something horrible in there, like, I don't know, it looks like online voting in this room destroyed our elections forever. We're definitely going, like, the council will still be around and we could still get together. The people want this more than they want us. That's what we're here to do, right? Emergency happens, we react. I don't think it's necessary to add in any sort of amendment to say what we're already going to do. I really appreciate prudence. But I do think, like, let's say we get the CEO report and there's something horrible in there, like, I don't know, it looks like online voting destroyed our elections forever. Because the report will be ready by the 8th. And it, like, that's what we're here to do, right? Emergency happens, we react. I don't think it's necessary to add in any sort of amendment to say what we're already going to do.
I just want to, I am feeling some tension from mostly this side of the room, but I just want to, like, clarify, we are all on the same page. Like, we are into online voting, the people have spoken, democracy, wowie, but, like, we all, for new councillors as well, I just want to point out we all have a legal obligation to the student union to not get sued. We are not. This is not a way to we are all on the same page. Like push back the implementation of online voting. Online voting has been implemented. It will be implemented in the next election. Like we just need to make sure that I just want to point out we are doing the students justice by not giving out their personal information illegally to not get sued. And every person in this room has a legal obligation to protect the interests of the union. So we will have online voting, but also we need to protect students' interests, and that's what we're all here for. We're all on the same page. Everybody take a deep breath. We just need to make sure that we are doing the students justice by not giving out their personal information illegally.
Previous sentiments. I think that
every person in this room
I'm a little concerned sometimes about the fact that there are terms being thrown around, especially because there are new councillors that are really not accurate. We can't just change standing regulations and then give student information away. We're not repassing an entire question, but we can't just give student information away without consulting the students, and that's what the referendum question would be. It would not be to see if people want online voting. People want online voting, that was clear. But we found out that there are pieces of personal information that we would have to be using, and it's important that if students don't want us using that information, that we adjust and figure something out. But we can only know that by asking the students. We can't just So to just say, let's just change the standing regulations is not at all even the right way to go about this. And beyond it not being procedurally accurate is not ethical. But we found out that there are pieces of personal information that we would have to be using. And it's important that if students don't want us using that information, that we adjust and figure something out. But we can only know that by asking the students.
It's not
So
like
to just say,
legally
let's just
according
change
to
the
our
standing regulations is not at all even the right way.
Yeah, so
Yes,
under the Act respecting the
and
accreditation and
beyond
financing of
it
students
not being
associations,
procedurally accurate
accredited
is
student unions
not
are
ethical
entitled
and doesn't
to
protect student
the
interests.
contact information of students, and there's an important part here. There's commas, it's super legal. I had to talk to a real lawyer about it, not just me, who really likes policy.
It's not like legally according to
like
our
an actual member of the
regulations.
Quebec Bar. There's a comma that says, and with his permission, because Quebec law doesn't use accredited pronouns, entitled, there's no equivalent in French, contact information with his permission, and their student number, and it's the student number aspect and the private information that we would have to have contact information of students. It does not say that we have to make that information publicly available, so there's legality issues. The students have spoken, they want online voting. I just want to make sure that we're not just selling them up the river to a third-party company, and that we're doing this ethically, as they're said, and legally, as it's been said, and it's our duty as a union to consult with our membership before, and the private in a binding way to say, do you support us using Simply Voting with these requirements, so that as an organization, we're not students have spoken, they want online voting, screwing ourselves over, and we're not just selling them up. Does that I agree, we're here, let's do online voting, let's just do it right so that we don't end up with a lawsuit on our hands. Is that and legally, as it's been said, and it's our duty as a union to consult with our membership before, in a binding way, to say, do you support us using Simply Voting with these requirements, so that
regarding this,
as an
it's really not about
organization,
referendum question.
we're not
Doing it a second time, it's really just
screwing
about
ourselves
giving
over
people
and
more
our
time because
members.
this
I
motion just
agree,
came
we're
up today.
here, let's do online voting,
New
let's just do it
members
right
and
so that
full
we don't end up
councillors,
with a lawsuit.
we all just
Is
got
that
this
fair?
motion. There wasn't much time to prepare for it. It doesn't stop from happening for the next general election. It just means that this council, the same council, is going to revisit it in 4 months. It's not a huge delay. Giving people more time because this motion just came up today. New members and full councillors. We all just got this.
Paige, is there any opposition to calling the question?
Point of information, was the recent amendment added to the motion, or is it
this
council?
Yeah, it's I posted in the Facebook group. So the most recent amendment is to change the first be it resolved, so that would read be it resolved that the CSU use online voting until the May RCM or the May 2019 RCM, notwithstanding the relevant regulations, and be it further resolved that the CSU revisit online voting after receiving the CEO's report. The end of the motion.
Added to the motion, or is
Point
it?
of information?
I'm not sure if this is actually a point of information, but could someone just clarify what personal information is at risk? Just the student number?
We're legally allowed because we have a confidentiality clause in our contract with Simply Voting to give the information for the purposes of the elections. The issue is if we want the elections to be as secure as they can and to have things not happen like students getting emails well after they've graduated or different loopholes, people being very confused about that. It's easier and more secure if people are using their student numbers, and they have to consent to be able to do that because we can't set it up with them to use their student numbers without them consenting to us having access to their student numbers. And your student number gives access to a wide range of things. It's just trying to do it right and make sure that they are okay with this. And if they're not, by also looking into better solutions. But we want to do online voting again because we want to respect the will of the students. We just want to do it correctly. Did that answer? We can't set it up with them.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no opposition to calling the question's been called. So all those in favor of adding those amendments, please raise your placard.
It's just trying to do it right and
yes,
make
I
sure
can.
that they are okay
So the
with
first be
this.
it resolved clause would read, be it resolved that the CSU use online voting until the May 2019 RCM, notwithstanding the relevant regulations. And then at the end of the motion, there would be another be it further resolved that the CSU revisit online voting after receiving the CEO's report. The question's been called. So all those in favor of adding the amendments, please raise your placard. Yes. Yes, I can. So the first be it resolved clause would read, be it resolved that the CSU use online voting until the May 2019 RCM, notwithstanding the relevant regulations. And then at the end of the motion, there would be another be it further resolved that the CSU revisit online voting on the main speakers list, which is Jane, Jane, Rowan, James,
so all those in
Marlene,
favor
and
of
John.
adding the amendments, please raise your placards. The original. 8, all those opposed? Jane.
Right, so I guess it's just mostly to note that it's currently 9:30 and that later on the agenda we do have a point about efficiency.
So in that case,
So
the
I
amendment
would
carries, and we're back on
recommend to my
the
fellow
main
councillors
speakers
that
list,
we
which
wait
is
until the
Jane,
end for
Jane,
questions, that way we
Rowan,
don't,
James,
ask some
Marlene,
questions,
and
we
John.
don't repeat ourselves and we save time, if that's amenable to everybody.
Thank you. Okay, Rowan, Jane.
Right, so I guess it's just mostly to note that it's
I
currently
have one
9:30
thing,
and
is
that
that
later on the agenda we have a point
there was a
about
motion
efficiency.
passed,
So I
exactly
would
when, about
recommend to my
policy
fellow councillors that we
being
wait until the
mandated
end
to
for
look over the
questions.
elections
That way we don't ask
policies in general.
questions, we don't
And I'm wondering,
repeat ourselves.
now that there's this motion, it doesn't make sense to have it separated. It should be done, I think, by the same group. So I'm just trying to like figure out what, Caitlin, do you know what that motion was exactly? And perhaps either it can be the option to have it all on the elections and participation committee, or it could be separated, so they have a deadline to meet. Let's say it's March 1st, and then it goes to policy and they review everything else, because it's the previous motion about the election policies was supposed to be done by this mandate. And I think it could be a bit confusing if there's two separate things happening. So I'm trying to logistically figure it out. Or it could be
James, yeah, do you have
separated, so they have a deadline.
About measures for the next election, so it's the election, but so to my recollection, it's no longer
The previous
relevant.
motion about the election
Like
policies
its
was
mandate
supposed to
has
be done by
elapsed
this mandate.
because the elections
And
of now
it
have,
could be a bit confusing if
you know,
there's two separate things happening.
fluttered away.
Was it the one that happened on the November meeting when there were a bunch of people in the room,
Yeah.
60 or so? That was, okay, that's what you're talking about?
Yeah. Like its mandate has elapsed because the elections of now have, you know, fluttered away.
Was it the one that happened on the November meeting when there were a bunch of people in the room,
Yeah.
60 or so? That was, okay, that's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, so the motion was, whereas prospective candidates have voiced significant concerns about the CEO elections process, whereas policy committee has given suggestions to other autonomous groups such as JB, whereas we can't hash this out in this meeting, good times. Be it resolved that policy committee draft possible training manuals for the CEO, including ballot design, email response, and time expectations. Be it further resolved that past and present CEOs be consulted on this training manual.
So the motion
Be it further
was,
resolved that the
whereas
current
prospective
candidates have
council
voiced
seats are
significant
emailed for
concerns
their
about the
opinions
CEO
on
elections
possible ways
process,
to resolve
whereas
the
policy
situation in the
committee
future.
has given suggestions to other autonomous
Does that
groups
help?
such as JB, whereas we can't hash this out in this meeting.
I just want clarity.
Be it resolved that
on
policy
what I
committee
have to do
draft
before my
possible training
independent,
manuals for the
and
CEO,
if
including
it
ballot
should be
design,
given
email
to
response, and
the
time
committee specifically
expectations.
about elections,
Be it further
because they're
resolved that
already doing
past
that,
and
and that's
present
what the motion
CEOs
is
be consulted on this training
saying
manual.
currently.
Be it further resolved that the current candidates for
so I
council
want-
seats are
Sorry, there was
emailed
one
for
more
their
be it further
opinions
resolved.
on possible ways to resolve
It
the
ended by being
situation
further
in the
resolved
future.
that this policy draft be presented to the last council meeting in 2018.
And I just want clarity
Yeah,
on
so I just want
what
some
I have to
clarity
do
on
before
that
my
and
independent,
how we can logistically do this
and
if it's
given to
being kind of sent to two committees at this point.
elections, because they're already doing that, and that's what the motion is basically saying currently. So I want to.
Sorry, there was one more be it further
James.
resolved. I missed it. It ended by be it further resolved that this call that
Michaela,
this policy
with
draft
what
be
Michaela
presented to the last council
said,
meeting in 2018.
like, I don't
Yeah,
think that it
so I just
really,
want some clarity
it's
on
it's
that
not,
and
I
how we
really
can
think it's kind of like a
logistically do this
question of
if it's
non-overlapping
being
magisteria.
kind of sent to two
Meaning that like, policy committee currently has it's, correct me if I'm wrong, if I misheard, to draft
James.
training manuals. Like kind of very specifically training manuals to the CEO on how the CEO should design ballots and whatnot. I don't think that whereas what we're doing now is we're giving the election participation committee the mandate to write new standing regulations. Policy committee currently has, so to my knowledge, those, I mean, like currently it's divided, so we don't draft a training manual like kind of on this point, training manuals, right?
Yeah, the wording of the motion was
CEO on how the CEO should design ballots and whatnot. Whereas what we're doing now, so even though they're related, they're not necessarily, there's no overlap of standing regulations. There's no redundancy here. So to my knowledge, those, I mean, this is something that I think the community can work together on, but I don't think we need to change the motion for it. And on this point, speaking more generally about the motion, I think it's probably a very good step. It's a good step to implement it. I do want to remind council we need to put to the vote because we haven't changed standing regulations yet. And when we do present new standing regulations, they're not, we're going to have it. There's no overlap of responsibility. So there's no reminding everybody. So this is something that I think the committee can work together on, but I don't think we need to change the motion for as well. And we have more generally about ourselves a cushion of time, I guess, a very good step to hash out the best policies. And worst case scenario, we can just, submit a referendum, present new standing regulations. Now, we're going to have a 2/3 election again for the standing regulations, as many elections as we can. So just kind of reminding everybody once we don't have to wait until, because I think this is like worst case scenario, we don't have to wait until for the next year as well. And as we have ourselves a cushion of time, I guess, with the amendment to hash out the best policies. And worst case scenario, we can just, submit a referendum at any point now because we can use elections, as many elections as we can, as many elections as we want. So we don't have to
It
wait
is
until,
interlap, or it's like
worst case scenario, we
overlapping,
don't have to wait
because
until
if you're doing a
until
training
next
guide,
September
policies
to,
are
ask
changing,
people about this,
then
so we can do this
those
further.
are related to
So,
each other. And policy committee is currently quite overworked with other things. Not to say that if I am mandated to do this, I will make sure that the committee does it. But it's quite harder than you would think when you're collaborating with two different committees. Overlapping. That makes it more complicated. If you're doing a training guide, the policies are changing. Then those are I think that they should all be on the committee that's specifically about elections. Policy committee is currently that way there can be consistency of what training that if I am mandated material is relevant to the new policy changes. But it's quite harder than you would think when you're collaborating with two different committees.
That's why I had a citation.
That makes it more complicated.
But I would just like it noted, earlier in our discussion about this motion, it was said by a councillor that if a crisis or emergency comes up, then we'll react to it. And I think sometimes we forget that, these meetings are public for students and that the media is here, we are not alone. And I don't think that students want to hear that if something comes up that's disastrous, we'll handle it. We are here to represent student interests. It's important that when we hear concerns about a problem, we don't brush them off and say, we'll figure it out. When emergencies do happen, we do react to them, but if they're preventable, we should not be using negligent language like that and ignoring public potential issues. The other thing I'd like to say about issues and crises and emergencies is that the we that was described usually is the executive. We are here to represent when an emergency did come up specifically in November about elections, about a problem, we brush them off and say, the executive handled it. We saw how that went because unfortunately it was react to them, but a very difficult situation, but it falls onto the executive like that, have their own tasks aside from handling crises. The other thing I'd like to say about to have that being pushed onto the executive emergencies is very frustrating, and I don't want us to be setting ourselves when an emergency did come up specifically in November about when I hear that kind of language, it makes me really concerned that we are not handled it. We saw how that went because unfortunately it was a very difficult situation, but it falls onto the executive who have their own tasks aside from handling crises. So to have that being pushed onto the executive to me is very frustrating, and I don't want us to be setting ourselves up for disasters in the future. When I hear that kind of language, it makes me really concerned that we are not keeping student interests in mind.
James?
Oh, yes, I will.
1, 2, 3, and abstentions?
Call the question.
1. Okay, so that is a 2/3 majority, so the question's been called. Just for some Robert's Rules clarity as well, some motions get a debate and some don't. Oh, my placard's not here. There's a handy little guide on the back of your placard that tells you. So for example, a call to question. I don't open the floor to people debating whether the question is going to be called. It goes straight to vote, and then if it's yes, we vote, and if it's no, we go back to discussion. So since it was yes, we go straight to a vote on the motion in its entirety. It's been written on the council Facebook page along with the amended debate, and some don't. See it there. Oh, my placard's not here. There's a handy little guide on the back of your placard that tells you. In favor of the motion question, I don't open the voting on the whole motion whether the question's going to be called. But we added the amendment, and then if it's yes, we vote, and if it's no, we go back to discussion. Are we okay with the whereas yes, we go straight to a vote on the motion in its entirety. It's been written be it resolved that the CSU use online voting until the May 2019 RCM, notwithstanding the relevant regulations. So if everyone's okay, further resolved now. Be it further resolved that the CSU use simply voting platform to conduct the 2019 general elections. Be it further resolved that the CSU policy, or now it's elections and participation committee, proposed changes to electoral regulations for the 2019 general election by February 30th. Be it resolved that the CSU use online voting until the May 2019 RCM, notwithstanding the relevant regulations. February 29th. Further resolved now. Be it further resolved that the CSU revisit online voting after receiving the CEO's report. Be it further resolved. Is everyone okay with that? Policy, or now it's elections. So all those in favor of that motion, please raise your placards. Regulations for the 2019 general election by February 30th. Is there a February 30th? Okay, sorry, February 28th. Okay. Could we accept? Okay, the last day in February. And then be it further resolved that the CSU all those in favor, please raise your after receiving the CEO's report. Is everyone okay with that? All right, so all those in favor of that motion, please raise your placards. 0. So that carries unanimously. All right, so we are now back on the speakers list. Mohammed is still here for questions. John. There we go. All right, all those in favor, please raise your placards.
The aforementioned tasks assigned to policy committee relating to elections, such as preparing training manuals for CEOs,
so that carries unanimously.
Be transferred.
All right, so we are now back on the speakers list. Poor Mohammed is still here for questions. John.
Seems like the elections committee is the best place to the aforementioned tasks assigned to policy committee relating to the review of one elections committee and one chair, such as better organization-wise training manuals for CEOs. If there does need to be dialogue within the committee, that can be arranged. In terms of responsibility to the election, giving that committee the chance to sort of review, watch all the things happening and have comprehensive plans, probably the most efficient way to do it. Seems like the elections committee is the best place to do that. It's the elections, having all the different moving parts under the purview of one committee and one chair, probably better organization-wise. If there does need to be dialogue between the committees, that can be arranged.
I just want to stress that these folks on the executive sort of come across like they can do anything. They're also human beings who need like sleep and food and stuff like that. And we are not in the offices all the time, so we don't see exactly what their workload is and exactly like what they do at all times. So if they're telling you that the committee that they're in charge of like cannot take on this like this mandate, we should probably listen to them because they are the experts on like how much time they have in the day. So please be respectful of their time and mental health. Exactly what.
All right, thank you. Victoria.
I just wanted to agree with that as well. Just to clarify, you wanted to make like another committee for that, or there is already another committee for that? Please. Okay, that has like less.
This mandate. We should probably listen to them because they are the experts on like how much time they have in the day. So.
Yeah, so kind of, I'm completely not opposed to this. Like the reason that I kind of did the other motion is because I didn't think it was contradictory, so I don't think we had to worry about.
Just to clarify, you wanted to make like another
stuff like that. We didn't have to
or there is already
discussing an extra amendment before we voted on the ratifying the online
has
voting
like
thing.
less.
So I would urge everybody to kind of support this, just out of to consolidate and efficiency. Yeah, so kind of, I'm completely not opposed to this. Like the reason that I kind of did the other motion is because I didn't contradictory, so I don't think I had to worry about.
Well, it was initially to investigate online voting, and since there was this whole fiasco with the elections, I was like, the committee was going to do something after the elections. that didn't happen, so it kind of threw everything all together, but like, I think we could use this for this work. It was initially to investigate, so I guess it's changing sort of like with these motions to propose something for the future. But yeah, to investigate online voting, and since there was this whole fiasco
As a new counselor, and I saw
committee was going to do something after
the articles where the executives commented,
it kind of threw
so I just wanted to say, as a new counselor, thank you for the effort you put in. And from my perspective, I felt like the elections went smoothly, so I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because we have a committee called the Elections and Participation Committee. Online voting's done, so why not take that committee and make it do, alleviate some of the much building up work for policy committee. However, I think, like after we vote on this, we should seriously look into appointing potentially 2 or 3 new members to the committee right now to help with the workload that this committee is now inheriting. I think it's a great idea. So just wanted to state that because I think we should be sharing the burden. I also think we have a lot of new counselors who might want to get involved. You suffered probably the worst election I've ever seen, so maybe some of you are passionate about joining this committee and potentially fixing some of the, or improving our elections at Concordia. So yeah, to help with the workload that this committee is now inheriting. So just wanted to state that.
Okay, do you have a second for calling the question? Jared, is there any opposition to calling the question? Alright, so all those in favor of, do you need the motion reread? Okay, motion on the floor is that the task assigned to policy committee November 28th related to elections be transferred to the elections and participation committee. So that was the whole thing about ballot design and all that. So all those in favor, please raise your placards. Okay, do you have a second for calling the question? Jared, is there any opposition to calling the question? 17, so all those in favor of, do you need the motion reread? Got that. All those opposed? Floor is that the task assigned to policy committee November 28th. Oh, speakers list, okay. So that carries, and we're back on the speakers list, which is no one. So Michelle, please raise your
Yes, I forgot to do this during the appointments. I am resigning from the Elections and Participation Committee. I took the presidency for the Reggie's board when it became available because a CSU member, executive had to do that.
Oh, speakers list, okay.
And it takes up a lot of my time.
So that carries.
Yes, I'm resigning, and so we have an open seat for a CSU.
So Michelle.
Yes.
Okay, and we also have an open seat for a counselor. I didn't realize Peter sat on the committee as well. So there's an open seat for an executive and a counselor currently. Since it's vaguely related to elections things, it can be covered in this point. I don't see a problem with it.
When it became available because a CSU
yeah, so there's 2 seats open. Chris.
And it takes up a lot of my time. So, yes, I'm resigning, and so we have an open seat for ACSU.
Jane, was it quick or was it?
And we also have an
Okay,
open seat for a counselor. I didn't realize Peter sat on the committee as well. So there's an open seat for an executive and a counselor currently. Since it's vaguely related to elections things, it can be covered in this point. I don't see a problem with it.
May I correct my religion?
Yes, John? Yeah.
As I said
There's
a
2
long
seats
time
open.
ago,
Chris.
when Mohammed finishes his written report, he's coming back to council.
Yeah,
Might it make sense, unless Mohammed
Jane,
disagrees,
was it quick or was
to
it
just have him do a full comprehensive report next meeting when he's
It'd be great if we could finish
more prepared?
the presentation.
Has like, again, the full report to give a report
Is everyone
of,
okay with me doing motions till the end?
we are pressed for time. May I correct my
Does
religion?
anyone have any quick questions?
As I said a long time ago,
They take off?
when Mohammed finishes his
Alright,
written
well in that case, I'd like to thank you very much for coming, and I guess we'll see you in February then.
Unless Mohammed
And I'll send you an email about when and where the meeting is.
do a full
Alright, thank you.
report.
John?
Full report to give. Because of the way the agenda flows, the elections budget is supposed to come after actuals. When I'm doing the presentation on the budget actuals, I can talk about that then if you prefer, but we want to lump the elections budget into this discussion now. Do you want to do that? Because it was only meant to be an informational point, just saying this is where things are at. Doesn't need any approval.
Alright, thank you.
So we have to focus on it as a budget report, if you want to do an election discussion.
John?
You can do either.
Alright, yeah, we can seamlessly transfer into it at the end.
The elections
Or at the end
budget
of this
is to come after
discussion.
actuals.
Chris and then Jane?
Doing the presentation on the budget actuals, I can talk about that later.
I want a motion to create 3 new counselor seats on the Elections and Participation Committee. There's also a vacant executive seat if an executive, like it was already there, so that can be filled by someone if they want. And we could vote on it next week, that's really no problem for the sake of expediency, but I just wanted to make the motion right now to create 3 new counselor
Chris and then
seats.
Jane?
Point of order?
Make a motion and vote on it next week?
No, create them, pass it this week and fill it up next week.
Oh, okay, yes, pass it.
Well, point of information, sorry. How many counselor seats are there again on there?
It was already there, so that can be filled by someone if they want.
Five, yeah, because yourself, David,
And we could vote on it
Chris,
next
Peter,
week,
and
it's really no
Sophie.
problem for the sake of
Okay,
expediency.
so-
I can find the
Make the motion
composition
right now.
for you.
No, I remember, I just wanted to remember how many people.
Alright, order please. Okay, so we have a motion on the table to create,
Pass it this
when
week
you
and
say
fill it
three
up.
new, do you mean two new because Peter resigned or three?
How many counselor seats are there again on there?
So you want 8 counselors? Five, yeah, because yourself, David,
Yes?
Chris, Peter, and Sophie were on it.
Quorum would be ridiculous if you had.
No, I remember, I just wanted to remember how many people.
Alright,
Do you wanna ruminate on that, or do you still wanna go with it?
When you say three new, do you mean?
Okay,
so there's a motion on the table to create one new counselor seat on the elections and participation.
So you want 8
Do we have a second?
counselors?
Lee, do you wanna motivate Chris?
Yes?
I just think if we're gonna be taking on a lot of work, we
Quorum
need more
would
labor.
be ridiculous.
And let's start with 1 seat.
Do you wanna ruminate on that, or do you still wanna go with it?
Okay, so there's a motion on the table to create one new counselor seat on the elections and participation committee. Do we have a second? Lee,
So I think
do you wanna motivate Chris?
I just think if we're gonna be taking on a lot of work, we need more labor.
a complete committee.
And let's start with
and
1
then
seat.
Try to, and see if we need to have more people on this committee.
Thank you. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and consider that the metaphorical you, but in the future we'll try to avoid it. Margot?
And actually like try to meet, like since I was
don't wanna make
appointed to this committee,
But it would be
didn't
lovely
meet
if,
So I think
folks who,
before creating new,
are on this committee, if they want more
we should
input
actually
and
try to
more
have a
help,
committee,
they can
a
post on the
complete
council
committee,
Facebook group
try
when
to-
their
and see if we
meetings
need to
are, so
have
folks
more
can like come and put in work and
Thank
stuff
you.
like that,
I'll
even
give
if
you the
they're not
benefit of the
necessarily
doubt
on,
and consider
like-
that
like
the
voting
metaphorical
members of the
you, but
committee.
in the future we'll try
just
to avoid it.
open it up.
Margot? Thank you. Patrick?
I don't wanna
I don't want to do anything, but it would be lovely if folks who
Add 1 seat to the current
are on
5.
this committee, if they want more input and more help, they can post on the council Facebook group when their
one on the
meetings are, so
speakers
folks
list,
can
so
like come and
everyone's
put in
good.
work and stuff like that, even if they're not necessarily on, like
Do you
like
just wanna-
voting members of the committee.
Yeah.
You can just open it up.
Thank you. Patrick?
Transfer.
No, Patrick, no.
So currently we're going to add 1 seat
Speakers
to the
list,
current
so
5.
all those in favor of creating a new counselor seat on the election and participation committee, please raise your placards. Okay, there's no one on the speakers list, so if everyone's good. Do you just wanna,
I motivated for that.
yeah.
Since we're getting a lot more
And
work now,
abstentions.
different tasks for transfer, there you go.
Alright, okay, so that carries, there is one new counselor seat on the election, favor of creating a new counselor seat on the election and participation
I
committee.
believe
Chris had suggested filling it next council, so we can have that come back on the agenda, yes.
Do you have a question? It didn't matter because there was no other speakers list, so it was kind of an informal thing.
Right, and abstentions, yeah. Yes, John. Right, 3. Okay, so that carries, there is one new counselor seat on the elections and participation committee. I believe Chris had suggested filling it next council, so we can have that come back on the agenda, yes. Do you have a question? We have a second, Jared. Is there anyone else executive who wants to nominate themselves? Yeah. Yes, John. Okay, just need a motion on the floor to appoint John by Jane, seconded by Sophie. Is there any opposition to appointing John as the counselor to the elections and participation committee? No? Perfect. All right, congratulations, John. You are the new counselor. You are the new executive. Jared, in the elections and participation. Is there anyone else executive who wants to nominate themselves? So we are still, yes, Jane? Okay, just need a motion on the floor to
yes, you
appoint
and then
John by Jane, seconded by Sophie. Is there any opposition to appointing John as the counselor to the elections and participation committee? Rowan, is there any opposition to 5 minutes? All right, congratulations, John. You are the new counselor. You are the new executive in the elections and participation committee. All right, everyone, it's 10:07. We can now
reconvene. One thing I forgot to mention, as I remembered eating food, is that if you have any dietary restrictions, allergies, anything like that, please refer to one of the executives. From my understanding, they all kind of share the food responsibility, and it'll get disseminated. Remember, we go till 11:30, or to the person who is buying one out for council meeting. So we're not just going to force you to eat something that you do not eat. That being said, we are now on 8A, which we're in new business substantive on point A, which is council debate efficiency. And the person whose motion that is not here.
Can you tell us who it is?
Sorry? Oh, it's Patrick.
Not me.
Is Patrick coming back? Yes, John?
They're coming back. Can I just make a point of privilege
Yeah,
while we're waiting? It's two very simple requests. You can submit a motion about anything to council whenever you want as a councillor. As a courtesy, it's just a good practice to submit them in advance so folks can read the motions before they come to council, maybe think about them a bit. And also just sometimes you get motions, they'll say this is moved by whoever or moved by this committee. Sometimes it won't. Maybe just putting your name on the motion is also a courtesy. It's optional, but it's a courtesy.
Oh yeah, and just on that note as well, so when you submit a motion to me or whoever submits a motion, they get first speaking rights. So the way it works is that they read the motion first, it gets seconded, and then they get first motivation rights. So whoever submits the motion, I will call on them. However, Patrick's not here, so maybe we can move to, the budget actuals, John. Do you want to deal with those now, or do you want to? If you're ready. I don't want to put you on the spot if you're not.
Take a second to pull them up.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so in that case, since it's kind of an informational point and doesn't require a motion, we can deal with 8C, election, or sorry, 8B, budget actuals?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
So every month I send out the actuals, so the year-to-date spending in different budget lines of the Concordia Student Union. If any of the new councillors want to get a sort of walkthrough of the budget, you can make arrangements with me, but very soon, probably next council meeting, we'll be doing a full budget revision process. We'll be doing a full presentation and approving a lot of new changes, so by default, you'll be getting good education on how the CSU budget works. But if you want something before then, please reach out to me. I will make all the time in the world for you, because I love talking about budgets. So it's a good idea to read the budget actuals documents that get sent out. There's going to be 3 columns in them when you receive them. So one will say the period 0 to period now actuals. So period 7 will be the end of December. We're always going to look at the actuals 1 month behind us, just because for accounting purposes we haven't fully closed the current month. So right now we have the December actuals closed. So the 3 columns you see there are the actuals to the end of the period. The center column is called period 0 to period current budget, which is it's not, we estimated internally that we thought we'd spend around that much by this time of the year, but it's not like this specific budget was approved by council, it's just sort of it's a guesstimate. And then the third column is annual budget, and this is the one that was approved as a whole document by council back in June. So, just get a sense of things. On the revenue side of things, the revenue has been slightly below what we projected, but it's nothing too concerning. When you're trying to predict how much money you're going to get from students, it's always looking into a crystal ball. So like I said, you don't know the full number of students that will actually enroll or how many courses they will take. So being more or less on target is where we are. On the lower side of it, but nothing surprising that's going to really affect us. There's been a little bit of miscellaneous revenue here and there, things like poster sales, some rentals of spaces, nothing dramatic. On the next category would be executive salaries and expenses, where so far the use of discretionary funds has been relatively low. On the council side of things, the fees, the actuals for the secretary's honorarium has been low because we haven't had a minute keeper over the last semester, so we've had mostly the chair doing that work simultaneously. There's a motion about that later in this meeting to talk about it. The council food budget's almost used up, but we're going to make sure everybody still gets to eat every meeting. The good news is that despite the fact that we had to postpone the elections and do a do-over of the fall by-elections, we're still going to be on the original budget target, so that's really exciting. The main driver of that, of course, is the switch to online voting. We have to add the subscriber fee, but we can just subtract the cost for security. So a lot less money going to mall cops. Within the staff salaries and benefits and admin and office expense lines, things are more or less on budget. There's nothing really out of the ordinary, unsuspected. You know, the phone bills come in, we knew that was coming, printing costs. No staff have been working ridiculous amounts of overtime. Nothing really that remarkable going on there. On the IT department, some of our lines are coming in under budget, so that's good. But there's no dramatic shifts over the last month anyway. The legal fees is really where we're getting hit hard. This is the one that's really over budget, and this is because it's hard to predict what will come up in legal issues each year, but we've had some pretty hefty bills. Several of them we tried to put onto the Silk Fund, and the Silk Fund committee actually rejected them, saying that these don't actually threaten the finances of the union, they're just, that's trying to put your operating expenses on us. So with the budget revisions, we're going to have to revise that upwards. The annual budget for legal fees was $20,000, and as of the end of December, we had reached $37,620, and there's still more bills pending. So that's an area of concern. Getting on to bank service charges. The switch to a new credit card system has meant that we'll no longer be really paying any interest fees, so it saves us about $500 a year. Then the next big category is student engagement initiatives. This is where most of the fun stuff in the CSU happens. So these are things like the student life budget, the BIPOC initiatives budget, external initiatives, campaigns, academic initiatives, loyalty committee, sustainability. That's where all this stuff is. Largely we are under budget on this. The biggest driver has been the fact that orientation expenses have been really well organized and significantly under budget. So there's been big savings there. We're probably going to be able to revise the academic initiatives budget down for the year. We saved some costs on handbook printing earlier in the year, so folks that were around know that, but for the folks that knew, that was a line of savings. There's a few other items where money was budgeted and expenses haven't incurred yet, so there's some savings there. But on the operations side of things, when we passed this budget back in July, the goal was to run a thin surplus. Our goal is not to run big profits or big deficits. Our goal is to provide services to students with the money they pay. So we were projecting a thin surplus of $5,000, but so far our projected surplus is rising. It's a little bit more comfortable. So I'm happy with how that's going. And then next up we have the three service centers. So the HOJO, the Off-Campus Housing and Job Bank, and there's the Advocacy Center, and then there's the Legal Information Clinic. On the HOJO side of things, revenue is more or less on target. We're in the process of applying for some grants to increase the revenue for them. One is a grant through the Dean of Students Office, because the services at the job bank side of HOJO used to also be an admin service, and they downloaded that to students. And so as a result, they earmarked some funds through CCSL every year to give to HOJO. But for some reason, you have to apply to it and ask permission to get that grant every year, so we're working on that. But we're also looking into applying for summer student job grants, which the CSU hasn't done before, but it's a way to get some free money potentially for interns during the summer, which would benefit HOJO because during the summer we actually had some interns that worked on the Woodnote Housing Code. We had one person doing focus groups for marketing, another person doing promotion. And so if we can move those intern costs, which is about $6,000 total, get some free money from the federal government, that'll be beneficial. HOJO is more or less on target for the year. They're projected to run a small deficit for the year, but it's in the context of the fact that over the last several years they've run a surplus. They have an accumulated surplus reserve of just around $24,000. So the choice to run a deficit this year is because we need to invest in some website upgrades, but it's not like it's a result of bad financial management. We have a surplus that we can dip into. The Advocacy Center has been, on the other hand, we're projecting for the year to run a $30,000 deficit. This is because in 2015 there was a referendum to actually reduce the fee levy for advocacy, which was a very bad decision. The department was running surpluses at the time, so they thought, okay, we can return the money to students. But they did that, then almost immediately the university started winding down its internal advocacy service, putting more pressure on advocacy. So we had the increase in demand, decline in revenue, created a structural deficit. That's why the election that just happened, we ran a referendum to restore that fee levy so that we can solve the structural deficit. However, despite the fact that we initially budgeted back in June to run a $30,000 deficit in advocacy. The department is on track to actually run a surplus. This is because advocacy recently signed an agreement with the Graduate Student Association, who collected a fee levy for advocacy but never gave it to the actual advocacy center. So we just got a $50,000 cash infusion from the graduate students. There'll be another $21,000 coming next year. So it's $71,000 over 2 years, but they gave more of it up front. So they gave us $5,000 infusion of cash, so it actually means that we'll finish the year in that department in a surplus. And then the deficit will not exist next year because there's more additional revenue from undergrad students. Legal information clinic side of things, pretty much everything's on budget. There's nothing remarkable there. The only major line that seems really out of whack would be the LIC expenses line. That's budget code 7815, where the annual budget is $23,000. We only spent about $3,700. There's a lot of expenses due to come in very soon, where they're investing in new purchases for their legal library, and that will run several $1,000s because legal books are expensive. So they probably will still come under budget for the year, but there will be more spending in winter than there was in the fall. But they're projecting, at the rate of spending, they're going to run a higher surplus than initially budgeted. And then finally we have the clubs department, which is an additional fee levy. One area where I'm watching is the fact that external funding for the clubs has been really slow to come in compared to previous years. And so this makes clubs, similar to advocacy, clubs was in a structural deficit because the fee levy was reduced in a referendum at the same time as clubs got more active. So the more students were getting involved in clubs, the clubs themselves were getting more active. Costs were rising to make sure that they can put on the events for students. So this has been and continues to be one of the bigger projects I have in the finance land to sort of solve that, getting a lid on our financial processes in the clubs department. It's difficult because there's so many different clubs that it's a lot of cat herding going on, but at the rate of spending, it looks like it's going to be a little bit above what was initially budgeted in June, but largely the deficit change is going to be mostly from the fact that the external funding, like sponsorship for the clubs, has been down so far. So it's more on the revenue side than the spending side at this point, but we're still doing more reviews. If there's any... Oh, one other thing. We passed a motion at Finance Committee. It was approved in tonight's consent agenda. For the club's other expenses, there's $5,000 allocated for the club's budget to purchase furniture and other types of equipment for the club spaces that exist on campus, and really be able to move that onto the Student Endowment Fund, which is another funding source for the Dean of Students. So there's some savings there we can find. And that's basically the update on the budget actuals. There was a request from one of the councillors to go into more detail on the elections budget specifically. So if it's okay, I would like to just move into that, and then we can just do all sorts of questions. Instead of, that works for folks? So, again, this was in the council package. Back in June, when we approved the annual budget, we gave the elections department $72,500. The budget itself doesn't have to get submitted to any committees for approval. It's developed by the CEO. Although this is something that the CEO was brand new. This was the first of 3 CEOs now. I sat down with them, tried to give them a sense of what the different expense lines have been in past elections and what they might want to do in this election, give them a sense of what these things have costed us, and drop a budget. And then cost it for one election, then the next election, see what the whole year looks like. For the 2018 by-elections, the botched ones, the cost for that came to around $23,645. So of the CEO, the DEO salaries, and poll clerk salaries, there was $15,371 spent there. Candidate reimbursements that get to come in. There was a couple costs here and there for space rentals, laptop rentals, security, printing of the ballots, printing the posters, that kind of stuff. So that's where those costs came from. The election that just passed, there's still a few more actuals to come in. I think there's one more pay period due, but the staffing costs are down because fewer poll clerks were needed. Because you only needed one person at each polling station versus at least 2 at all times, because it was a very different process. The biggest saving, of course, is the fact that we're not having to spend any money on mall cops. The bill, if we had gone through all 3 days back in November, would have been $17,000 for all that security costs. And so seeing that $17,000 in one column changed to a 0 in the next one and 0 in the one after that, I found that pretty fun. The online voting service fee, of course, is the only new expense. That came to a total of $9,200 for a year's subscription, so that'll cover the March by-elections, so the March general elections plus the upcoming November by-elections in the next fiscal year. So as it currently stands, adding up the botched by-election, the by-election that just happened, and the upcoming general elections, where the numbers budgeted are assuming costs will be more than it probably will be, so budgeting conservatively, better safe than sorry type of practice. We're still looking at becoming in about $3,600 under the amount that was set by council back in June, so I'm happy about that.
Are there any questions or comments for John? All right, so thank you for giving the update. Did you cover B and C in there?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. Okay, so now we are on 8A, which is council debate efficiency. And Patrick, this one's your motion.
So I guess, well, there's two motions in there, so I guess I'll start with the one on the top. So it says, whereas council spends far too much time on agenda points, be it resolved that each agenda point by default be given a limit of 20 minutes. Be it further resolved that once this 20-minute limit has expired, council may renew for another 20 minutes by 2/3 majority. Be it further resolved that other changes to the time limit may be made via a 2/3 majority vote.
Thank you. Is there a second? Zach Lee. Right, so your motivation, Patrick?
Well, I think we can all agree that we want to get out earlier, and I think we can also have an informed debate at a smaller amount of time. I think we all don't enjoy being here till late at night, so that's my motivation.
Thank you. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, so I think what's great about this motion is that it doesn't limit debate. It could go on forever if the council so chooses, but it makes sure that every 20 minutes you're being reminded that, hey, we just spent 20 minutes on this. Do you want to spend another 20 minutes? And we have to think about it. And I just think it's good for us to be time conscious, because that's something that I feel like we have not been the most successful at as a council.
Thank you. Michelle?
I like this motion. I just wanted to check in with the chair to see how feasible it is to, not for the 20 minutes, but timing people for 2. Is that?
That would be the second motion.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
yes, correct. My bad.
I can for 20 minutes. Yeah. Any other speakers? Okay, so if not, all those in favor, please raise your placards. 16, all those opposed? 0. All right, so that carries unanimously. We're still on the council debate efficiency, and I think there was another motion, Patrick?
Yeah, so this one's council speaking terms. So whereas councilors and executives can currently speak for an unlimited duration of time during a speaker turn, be it resolved that councilors and executives be given a maximum speaking time of 2 minutes per speaker turn. Be it further resolved that this not apply to presentations and those presenting an agenda point. Be it further resolved that exceptions be made via a 2/3 majority vote.
Do we have a second? I have a question actually. Oh, we'll wait till we'll get a second first, Caleb. And then Patrick, your motivation, I'll put you on speaker list.
Well, my motivation is I want to create a debate, informed, efficient debate so we can leave earlier, and that is my motivation.
Thank you.
My quick question is, in the event that, remember in November when there was a lot of people who came in, do you include the students as well in the people who have unlimited time, or is their time to speak limited as well?
Go ahead.
Well, I need to change it, I guess, to anyone who has, any member of the CSU or anyone who's speaking privileges, I don't know. Yeah.
Just all speaker privileges?
Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, yes.
Is that what it said?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay, yeah, so do we have a second for the amendment, just to change counselors to all speakers? Okay, is there any opposition? Okay, so I'll add it to the motion. Michelle?
Yes, the question I asked before, I don't know what the implementation plan was for the 2 minutes, but if it was for the chair, is that feasible?
Ish. I mean, do you want my opinion on it?
Yes.
Okay, when I'm chairing, and like, I don't wanna sway discussion, but like, I'm listening to what you all are saying to try to make sure that it's on topic while answering questions on Facebook and building a speakers list. And sometimes it's really difficult, so I can't imagine having to time every single person for 2 minutes. I could try, but it just sounds very difficult. But if you mandate me to do it, I can do it. Rowan?
I've got an amendment that I just thought up. Could we amend, I don't know how to word this, but essentially make an amendment like, this isn't in effect unless someone raises their placard and asks for it to be in effect. It's like essentially it's not in effect all the time, but as soon as conversation starts dragging up, one person can just be like, I call for 2 minutes, and just from there on it carry through.
Could work. I don't know how to word that amendment, but yeah, that could work. On request. Just for some context, there's been times when people spoke for a really long time. I know you all remember the time that Graham Carr, was that his name? Some guy from the administration showed up. Let's not rehash that moment. But anyways, I had a lot of people asking me, can you interrupt them? And the answer is no, I can't. So I understand, like, if that's, like, I don't have the authority to interrupt anyone speaking, except if it's obviously like, they're being disrespectful or something like that. But just because you're taking time, I have no authority to do that. Like, that's the whole point of filibustering in the House and all that follow parliamentary procedure. So this would allow me to do that if the circumstance necessitated it. I don't know. If you can come up with a better way to phrase that, go ahead. Chris?
Yeah, so on implementation, personally, if you were to try your best, and like we could be loose with it, right? Like the general idea is we're all trying to keep our speeches to 120 seconds each. And you know, like if it goes on an extra 30 seconds or an extra minute, I think it's just good to have it as like an ideal that we could work with. That nobody's speaking for more than 2 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
That way we could go around, and if you have something else to contribute, because I think it's the worst thing. I remember on November 28th, we had that meeting where, you know, there's some outsiders and they wanted to just say one thing and they had no opportunity to speak. I think that's just the worst thing when you're waiting on a speaker's list for like 20 minutes and then you don't want to get on it again because you're afraid you're not going to be able to speak.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have to wait like an hour again.
Thank you. Jade? Paige?
I resent.
Lee?
Yeah, this is just a question on clarification for me. So the motion that was passed way back in like August, I believe it was said, with regards to council can end at 11:30, and then now we have this motion where 2 minutes and all that fun stuff. Does that extend to next year's council and the council year after that?
It is supposed to, yes. In practice, it doesn't always, but when you make resolutions, like there's no, the Quebec Companies Act doesn't recognize discontinuity in the board. So whether you're here or you're here next year, like it's still the same board, so technically resolutions and motions should follow. Do they in practice? Not necessarily. I mean, if I'm still here, then I'll remind the people next year that that's a motion that the CSU made. And I know that the executives are trying to compile all of the motions to remember what councils in the past have voted on. So to answer your question in a really long way, yes, it should be there next year.
Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about where we could go with this. If it was just sort of an ideal and something for people to keep in mind, then we don't need a motion for it, because if we can't implement this motion, then there's sort of no point. I think everyone knows that the ideal is to try to cut it short, but some people are unable to do that. So if we can't actually stop people from talking, then what is the point? And if we have it as, something we keep in mind, chances are the people who will be cut off when people think that they're talking for too long are going to be women and other marginalized groups, because a tendency is that men talk the most and for the longest, and people don't notice as much.
Thank you. Sophie? Yeah, I'd just like to point out that I'm a little uncomfortable with us referring to the November 28th meeting as having outsiders at council. We had members of the CSU at our council who are entitled to be at our open session meetings, and referring to our members who we're supposed to represent in these meetings as outsiders is just like a little bit uncomfortable. And also, I would like to reiterate what Michelle just said about the people who are most likely going to be cut off the most if we implement it that way are the ones who usually aren't given the platform they deserve to have anyway. So,
Thank you. Jane?
If we need to implement this, is it something that the minute keeper could do logistically?
I can answer that. No. Not while taking minutes. I mean, you could try, but.
It would actually probably be easier for the chair because I'm not sitting here taking minutes constantly, but yeah, that's just me. Chris?
Yeah, actually, I don't understand because I do think men talk a lot, and I think the point of this motion is when people like me talk a lot, Caitlin could shut me down. If I try to speak 10 minutes, I could get shut down. It prevents filibustering. I don't understand that point. To me, it's just like, and to address the concerns of Michelle, there is an enforcement mechanism. What this motion does is it tells Caitlin, if there's a situation where somebody seems to be rambling on too long and taking speaking space from other people, it gives Caitlin the ability to shut people down. Caitlin does not currently have this power, or at least formally recognize this power.
The speaker's list is short, so I can Paige?
I wanted to go back really quickly to the point about speakers who come in and do presentations, because I think us as counselors talking in council is easy to keep your comments to a minute and a half. I think often there's a lot of like preamble before actually getting to the point. So to keep that in mind, to just like say your thing, it's meant to be like it's supposed to be a concise system. But I wanted to talk about like having the ability to shut down like presenters. I personally would not be comfortable with that because they take time to come here and present and they have it planned. But maybe to have like something in the regulations that says like keep your presentations to like, I don't know, 25 minutes including questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the motion excludes presenters. Like we would not be able to shut them down. It's in the motion.
Michelle?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm Margot.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, my mistake.
Like, direct question, would you be comfortable having like the authority to be like, hey, you're rambling? Like,
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I can always remind, like, sometimes they'll be like, speed it up a bit, but I have no authority to actually stop people. Like, I've kind of kept the stopwatch here to see what it's like, and everyone's been talking for 20 seconds or less, so it's actually been pretty easy. But, yeah.
instead of mandating Caitlin to like keep track of like 120 seconds, can we just leave it up to their good critical thinking skills and say, please do this more often? Like we don't have to make a motion about it?
That could work. At the same time, I would feel like, I know there were some meetings where some kind of tough issues came up, and I would feel really uncomfortable if somebody was talking about something really personal to be like, okay, time's up, bye. Yeah, that's just me. Jane. Oh, sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that my issue is that I think that if we can't do it with the 2-minute minimum, maximum, like being tracked, is that just by feeling, whether it's Caitlin or someone else, because Caitlin might not always be our chair, that leaves it open, like myself and Sophie have said, for the people that are most likely to be, I feel like this person is talking too much, often is women, and people who don't have space as much, and Caitlin is, our chair is great, but we are all humans, and there are all things in our society that impact our judgment and our critical skills, despite our best intentions. And our chair might not always be our chair because maybe they will move on to other things and want to not spend their Wednesday nights here.
No.
So that's my concern, and the problem with that is is it logistically possible for them to time it? That's just what I'm feeling.
I can answer. The short answer is yeah, I can do it, but I feel like extenuating circumstances, like it would be tough to do the super strict thing, but giving me discretion, I could deal with that. Jane?
I'd like to call a question.
Okay, do we have a second for calling the question? Jared, is there any opposition to calling the question? 1, 2. Okay, so sorry, all those in favor of calling the question? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed? 1, 2, and an abstention.
For me?
Okay. Yes?
Information, so does that mean that the motion that, sorry, I forgot the word, but basically the new introduction that the chair will be, basically taking care of the minutes, I guess?
Well, we just called the question, so now we're gonna vote on the motion that's on the table.
Okay.
So we haven't actually voted on the motion yet. Yeah, so all those in favor of the motion, please raise your placards. All right, all those opposed?
Oh wait, can we restart the vote? What was it on this time?
Oh, it's on the motion that Patrick read.
Oh, okay.
All good? Okay, so all those in favor, please raise your placards.
Oh, sorry.
6. Yeah, 6. All those opposed? 5. Okay, so that carries. We will be keeping it to 2-minute speaker turns. If I can figure out how to use the stopwatch. Yes, Margot?
Can we all agree that we will be like lenient with the chair and like if things get to be a problem and like people notice that like women of color are being like silenced a bunch, like can we like we can sort of feel out how this goes and people like invited to message whoever they're comfortable with about like issues that arise?
And anything can be revisited if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Victoria?
Let's get to what she said, kind of.
Patrick?
I heard a lot of talk about it, but I think it's probably better that you don't have a stopwatch continuously running and that you start it at your own discretion. So I don't know if having a 2-minute time limit is what's really right, but kind of maybe at one point if you decide that it's starting to get longer, that's when you start a timer, say for an additional 2 minutes or something along those lines, because again, as you said, 2 minutes from issue to issue, it really depends on what we're speaking about. I think that it's more important to simply give you the power to stop something that someone that's rambling and prevent any filibustering situation.
Yeah.
It's just like, we already voted for the
Yeah.
motion, so we cannot change it right now.
Yeah. I mean, you could, but it requires another kind of vote. Jane?
Yeah, so I just want to mention that I don't feel as if the same that's going to be applied often, just because even though there are some people who may talk more, it's more, they speak in more intervals. So it's not like they're spending more time in one speaking moment, but more, they're taking more speaking moments overall. So I don't think that the same that's going to come a lot, and it's not going to really silence as many people as it could if it's more limiting the number of times someone can speak or their overall speaking time.
Thank you. Margot?
Orders of the day?
Yeah, I'll take it. All right. Oh yeah, so it's kind of like calling the question when there's no motion on the table. So orders of the day is just like we're kind of digressing. Can we move it along? And I get to say, sure. That being said, we are now on, where did my agenda go? We are now on the point called, was there anything else for council debate? There were no more motions, right? Okay. Food System Special Project Committee Minutes. And this one was,
Sorry?
Food System, was that you?
Yes.
Yes, there we go.
My apologies. Yes, so the food system projects, so we had an application come in from Concordia alumni and a Concordia student
that are trying to get a project approved that is basically, the idea is to be a long-term study on plant-based diets and its health objectives on students, and also to see how that affects like what's going on campus, and to encourage more plant-based options on campus, and also to just encourage more student-run food systems. So, because a part of the project is to use the other food systems that are on campus as resources to learn about plant-based diets, because a lot of them do follow like a vegetarian menu. So that's what we brought up during our committee, and it passed. And now we're here.
Right, so we will need a motion to ratify the minutes as well. So that can either come now or later if you want to talk about them more, John.
Oh, I just wanted to step back. Food System Special Project Fund applications are also, they use the Silk Fund, that's why it has to come to council versus their independent committees. This was something that was created a couple of years ago with referendum to amend the standing regulations to allow use of the dividends from the Silk Fund to support various student initiatives related to food systems projects on campus. Normally the Silk Fund is supposed to be used for very specific things, but the dividends of its investments can be used on operation funding, initiatives type of stuff. And so these regulations, which are in the standing regs, the very last thing, is like the last annex, spells out the process for this. So for food system special projects applications, it has to go to the Sustainability Committee first. They review the application there, they approve it or they don't. They send it to council, council has to debate it, decide approve or don't, and then it goes to the Silk Fund Committee for approval. So just understanding why it's coming to council versus the Sustainability Committee alone, and yeah. Because there's another food system thing coming up next, just wanted to make sure people know what that is.
Thank you very much. Caleb?
Now we're going to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, so you move to ratify the minutes?
I move to ratify the minutes.
Okay, good second. Jane, do you want to motivate?
No, something's fine with me.
Okay, I guess we'll open discussion. Does anyone want to discuss? Okay, so all those in favor of ratifying the minutes, please raise your placards. This being let me just find the actual name, the Food System Special Project Committee minutes. Please raise your placards. All those opposed? 0. Perfect. So that carries unanimously. Is there anything else on food